A battle broke out on the 9,000th circle of hell, where the power of the most terrible creatures is concentrated. It was here that the two most powerful demons came together, ready to fight for the title of true ruler. The legendary Palak entered the arena with cold composure and fire in his eyes. His rival, Carcass, was furiously striving to win the championship and prove his superiority. The battle raged fiercely, blows falling with frenzied speed, raising waves of dark power. The demons threw each other into the air, each attack potentially the last for both. But Carcass didn't stop there. He called on a horde of subordinates to tip the scales. The lesser demons rushed forward, surrounding Palak in a tight ring on all sides. In the midst of chaos, Carcass unexpectedly broke through the defenses and dealt a terrible, almost fatal blow. It seemed the battle was over. The mighty warrior would fall and accept defeat before the crowd. But Palak did not waver. His will burned brighter than the hellfire around him. He gathered the remnants of his strength, broke the ring of enemies, and pierced Carcass's defense with an accurate blow. The opponent's last scream melted into darkness as Palak finally won. After the victory, Palak went to the Demon Lord's castle, having heard that he was going to leave hell. A multitude of questions swirled in his mind, but suddenly he felt a familiar aura, his master. This demon once devoured all powerful opponents thanks to the power of a true soul eater. It turned out that the Lord himself, having lived in hell for 10,000 years, longs to taste power again. The unchanging landscape and eternal darkness no longer gave him any reason to stay here any longer. When the ruler showed his true face, it became clear that it was Arian, the main character of the story. Palak, remembering the offering, presented him with a gift, the head of the last supreme demon. It was the head of Pokemor, a cruel lord whose heart burned with the fire of hellish hatred. But suddenly Arian declared that he wanted something simple, to taste human food, which he had not seen for so long. The demons were already busy preparing the food, but the reason for his anxiety was not at all about the food. The main character was tired of the hellish routine and actually dreamed of just reading manga. Palak, realizing his powerlessness, began to beg the Lord to punish him for his failure. But instead of anger, Arian admitted that he would like to even feel love, at least once in this life. At that moment she appeared, Lilith, the queen of the succubi, full of charm and shameless passion. She tried to seduce Arian, using every gesture, every look, and every smile. But the guy remained indifferent. Her appearance seemed completely unattractive to him. He believed that a true succubus should have a seductive beauty worthy of her nature and name. Disappointed in everything, he finally decided it was time to leave hell and return to Earth. The more he was asked to stay, the more firmly he stuck to his decision. Having previously absorbed the last great demon Baal, he completed his preparations for his exit. He instructed Palak to prepare everything necessary for the crossing, and although he hesitated, he still carried out the order. The sorcerer Aemon began the ritual, and when Arian appeared, the magical symbols shone even brighter. The Lord's power surged upward, rising into the heavens, illuminating hell with a blinding blast of energy. No one was waiting for him on Earth, but Arian wanted to escape from here, just to avoid being left in hell. Lilith, not wanting to say goodbye, gave vent to her emotions, tears rolling down her face like hellish dew. This scene only caused him irritation, which instantly destroyed the remnants of patience. He rushed into the portal without looking back, determined never to see the succubus queen again. After racing through dimensions, Arian reached the transition core, where the system issued a fatal error. His excessive power proved unstable, so some of the energy had to be temporarily blocked. The loss of strength hit him instantly. Consciousness faded, and he passed out in the core of space. My eyes only opened when the soft light of the forest filtered through the branches and touched my skin. Arian found himself among the trees, not yet realizing that he had finally left the hellish world behind. His first impulse was to check his specifications, but there he found something unexpected. His power appeared sealed. None of the forces responded. Everything looked extremely suspicious. Before he could comprehend the situation, a piercing scream pierced the forest air. a pack of goblins suddenly jumped out of the thickets, with weapons and hatred in their darkened eyes. These creatures could not exist on the earth he remembered, and this encounter only added more questions. Arian tried to defend himself, but the dark energy proved too weak for real resistance. Then he switched to a backup method, summoning blades that once left no chance to enemies. He dealt with the goblins effortlessly, increasing his level with each body he defeated. After the battle, Arian used the absorption technique, taking power from the bodies of the monsters he had just killed. The dark energy in him grew rapidly, which was only possible in the conditions of the hellish dimension. This gave him reason to doubt. It seemed that he had arrived on a completely different Earth. Before he could comprehend the situation, he heard a new scream, not at all like the roar of a beast or a demon. The intonation was different. It could only be a human voice, full of panic and pain. Arian did not hesitate. He immediately rushed to the sound, cutting through the thickets and approaching its source. Among the monsters stood a girl, 2 eyes, 1 nose, and no tentacles or mutated features. He immediately understood that he was dealing with a human being, and he needed to act without delay. In a few moves, he blew away all the monsters, leaving behind only dust and dismembered bodies. The girl, whose name was Hana, stood in awe as he silently extended a helping hand to her. She thanked him, but Arian didn't listen. His answer was completely unexpected. Instead of explanations or politeness, he simply asked her to marry him immediately. Arian quickly realized that he had overreacted, so he apologized and finally introduced himself to the girl. At that moment, Hana staggered in pain, but before she could fall, the hero managed to gently pick her up. When he supported her, a smartphone fell out of his pocket, which Arian involuntarily picked up and looked at the screen. What he saw was shocking. The date on the device showed the year 23, which surprised him greatly. Questions began to multiply in her head when the girl began to explain how she ended up in that zone. She used words he didn't know, which made him momentarily lose confidence and become a little confused. Despite this, the conversation continued until Hana, embarrassed, prepared to head back to the gate. Arian silently followed her, escorting her to a portal that led to a completely different world. Inside, he saw a crowd of ordinary people and almost cried, feeling the true presence of life. Hana invited him to come to her place for lunch to thank her for saving him, and he readily agreed. Then they were stopped by officers who demanded to see documents confirming the player's identity. Arian was forced to use an illusion, creating a distorted perception in one of the guards. The replacement ID looked defiant, a gesture with the middle finger that was miraculously considered the norm. The officer, under the influence of the illusion, confirmed Arian's identity and let them pass without question. When they reached the building where Hana lived, the hero could barely contain his emotions. Everything seemed like a dream. Climbing the stairs, he eagerly inhaled familiar smells, felt the touch of the handrails and wooden steps. Every little thing, from the light in the window to the texture of the walls, made his heart pound with happiness. Going inside, Arian saw Hana's mother, who was restless with worry for her daughter. Upon learning that it was he who saved her life, the woman was confused and decided to thank him with a delicious homemade meal. While her mother was cooking, Hana helped her in the kitchen, and Arian asked the girl for her smartphone for a few minutes. He turned off the save query function and for a moment was absorbed in running his finger across the touchscreen. Remembering the past, the hero opened the news and began searching for records dating back 5 years. He was interested in the events of 2018 because that's when he was dragged into hell, leaving the world without explanation. On February 22, 2018, the planet was shaken by portals from which unseen monsters continuously appeared. Conventional weapons were useless. Soldiers died by the hundreds, standing no chance against the otherworldly force. In response, the U.S. initiated the creation of a global coalition to respond to abnormal emergencies. At that time, players began to appear, people with extraordinary powers who became humanity's last hope. Arian realized that it was then that he had been taken to hell, presumably due to the awakening of a new powerful force. His thoughts were interrupted by Kana, who brought lunch, and the sight of the meal literally made Arian faint. On the plate lay his former favorite dish, the one he had missed the most all these years. He began to eat hastily, spoon by spoon, unable to contain his delight, which surprised Hana and her mother. In hell, he had to take in dark energy and survive by feeding on nightmare-like creatures. Despite the fact that he had almost become a demon, his tastes and desires remained purely human, as did his appetite. The demon food was so disgusting that sometimes he cried as he swallowed the flesh from the ugly bodies. Now, having tasted a real meal prepared with care, he felt a happiness he had long forgotten. After thanking him, Arian asked for more and just as quickly began to enjoy every bite. Suddenly, a loud explosion came from behind the door, causing the girl and her mother to flinch in alarm. A man emerged from the cloud of smoke, his eyes glowing with rage, and he shouted Hana's name as if he were an acquaintance. Upon receiving news that Hana had walked through the gate on her own, Esther appeared enraged by her action. He didn't like it at all that the girl was acting without permission, violating his notion of subordination. However, Hana was not at a loss and began to demand that he leave the apartment, calling herself a gambler. The words about her independence infuriated him, and he exploded in anger, insulting even her father. After that, he grabbed the girl by the hand and forcibly dragged her to the Andras Guild, founded by her brother. Hana resisted with all her might, trying to break free, and even bit Esther in a fit of indignation. This angered him even more, so he decided to act his way, hinting at harsh methods. Upon hearing this, the girl's mother stood up for her, promising to take the blame and work it out. Esther pushed her away roughly, not holding back her strength, causing Hana to run to her mother in a panic. But as the man grabbed the girl by the throat, ready to strangle her, a loud sound suddenly made him stop. Looking back, he saw Arian, who, indifferent to everything, calmly finished his favorite dish. No insult made the hero even glance up. His indifference only irritated Esther more. He kicked the table, knocking everything to the floor, which finally forced Arian to react. The protagonist fell next to the remains of the food, bitterly regretting the destroyed dish, as if it were a loss. The next moment, Esther kicked him in the side, but it only ignited something very dangerous inside. Arian's gaze made his opponent flinch. A real threat and darkness flashed in his eyes. When he felt the aura that erupted outward, he realized that he was not just a human being, but a demon. Despite her fear, Esther suppressed her hesitation, focused, and without hesitation activated her own abilities to their full potential. But Hana, wanting to protect Arian, did not hold back and struck first, drawing attention to herself. Taking advantage of the momentary advantage, the protagonist performed a distracting maneuver and struck with all his strength. Following the first, he struck 2 more blows, making Esther believe that the enemy was not that strong. He consoled himself with the thought that his opponent lacked speed, but the blows were coming down relentlessly and accurately. Eventually, the pain took over and Esther writhed, unable to resist the relentless rhythm of the attack. In desperation, he cursed the dish Arian had just eaten, calling it a miserable, ordinary soup. The main character lifted his enemy by the hair, forcing him to think about the words he had said. However, it was too late. With a cold expression on his face, Arian slammed his head into the ground with savage force. Without letting him come to his senses, he forced Esther to repeat what he should have admitted publicly and loudly. The phrase that soup is a blessed dish sounded louder and louder from his lips each time. When Esther's cursed pride finally broke, Arian pulled the deeply embedded blade from his hand. With calm cruelty, he reminded the enemy never again to demean a beloved human food. Later, while Hana was helping her mother, Arian ordered Esterna to wash all the dishes, wearing only her underwear. He was seething with humiliation, but due to fear, he did not dare to express his true thoughts aloud. He swore to himself that he would not leave it like this and would definitely tell his guild everything. However, Arian, looking at the man, understood that it was not profitable to just let him go. Coming closer, he forced Esther to look him straight in the eyes, not giving her the opportunity to look away. At this moment, the enemy encountered a creature hiding in the depths, a demon named Ouroboros. The cold gaze of an otherworldly entity pierced through the shell of consciousness and caused uncontrollable terror. Having drowned his will, Arian turned Astern into a puppet, banishing him from the house without explanation. Finding a mention of magic stones, Arian asked the girl for one to better understand the topic. When he took the crystal in his hands, he immediately felt that it was not dark energy inside, but something unusual and primal. After analyzing the structure, he realized that this was not demonic magic, but a force of a different nature. Then he asked about the Players Association, whose headquarters Hannah planned to visit in the near future. Despite the sympathy that associated her with an angel, he knew that for now she was only hindering his own development. However, his thoughts were interrupted by Hannah, already ready to leave, asking a question about his player card. When it became clear that he didn't have one, the girl suggested visiting the administration to register. After registering the card, he found out that no one had tried to submit a search request for it in 5 years. Although it was upsetting, getting a player's document meant taking the first step towards a new life on the surface. They were traveling in a bus, and as they approached the stop, they noticed the picturesque view outside the window. Arriving at the association, Hannah handed him her old phone and suggested they have dinner. After saying goodbye, Arian was left alone and went to the terminal to activate his card and get directions. After inserting it into the slot, I received a small coupon and headed to the waiting room with the other players. There, he overheard several young men animatedly discussing the skill levels, strengths, and structure of the existing guilds. After listening, Arian immediately began searching his phone for information about the names, chapters, and policies of these groups. He began to evaluate the names of leaders, the reputations of guilds, and potential threats through the prism of his past. He quickly realized that returning to his full strength could provoke serious conflicts with the leaders. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice calling him to go through the procedure for determining his individual level. It was explained to him that he needed to place his hand on a magic ball that would change color according to the power of the bearer. The darker the color, the higher the level, which means the greater the threat and potential for growth. Raising his hand, Arian inwardly wished not to attract unnecessary attention by agreeing to even the lowest score. The ball flashed brightly, filling the space with light, which made everyone around them look around warily. The employee, without changing her tone, announced that the level was determined to be F, causing a wave of surprise. The woman explained that he would receive an E-class card, which allows him to enter only the relevant portals of the association. If there is a desire to enter the gates of a higher class, the guardian must submit a corresponding written application. There were 2 ways to improve your level. Take a basic course, which is what Hannah did, or a collection of gems that can be obtained from monsters, which interested Arian more. So he politely refused his student ID, got up from his chair, and resolutely headed for the exit. The woman thought he was upset about the level awarded until the ball changed color. Its surface turned black, then wobbled and cracked with a bang, causing astonishment among those present. Even the strongest players had balls that were only dark blue, but never showed a pure black color. Meanwhile, Arian walked to the gate, where a multitude of newcomers were looking for a temporary team. Inside, he was met by a man who suggested he join the already formed group. Not all party members agreed, but the leader insisted, saying that we must give the person a chance and save their life. He introduced himself as Jim and said he was only 27, which caused Arian a slight surprise. However, he politely declined the offer, preferring to act independently and rely only on himself. Before saying goodbye, the man warned of the presence of a goblin boss, a particularly dangerous hobgoblin. Arian thanked him for the information, said goodbye, and immediately set off deep into the forest to look for his enemies. It wasn't long before he came across a great chance to obtain the necessary magic stones. Once near a small settlement, he ruthlessly exterminated the goblins one by one. After finishing the battle, he noticed a rise in dark energy and a simultaneous increase in his own level. As he absorbed the bodies of his opponents, he felt the remnants of dark magic within them, which grew even more. He realized that the source of the energy was not the crystals, but the moment of death of the creatures he had just defeated. This thought made him ponder more deeply the connection between the last breath and the burst of darkness. Gathering his strength, he began collecting magic crystals, thinking about dinner with Hannah. The image of crispy chicken only increased his desire to finish the job and return quickly. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly froze, noticing the figure of the hobgoblin boss in front of him. The giant creature used magic, causing Aryan genuine surprise and alarm. Without having time to react properly, he was forced to dodge the hobgoblin boss's swift attack. Although the level of dark energy was higher, the massiveness of the enemy became a serious obstacle. The weight of the boss's body created additional pressure, and this affected the effectiveness of his every movement. Each blow from the creature was much stronger than that of the goblins the hero had faced before. Realizing the threat, Aryan deployed Plan B and activated the power of the demonic spring croquelle. Channeling all the demon's fury, he aimed it directly at the boss, causing him to go into uncontrollable rage. The hobgoblin turned into a mindless creature that began to randomly strike furious blows. The speed of the strikes increased dramatically, but because of this they became inaccurate and less controllable. This gave Aryan a chance to dodge better while simultaneously preparing his counterattacks without losing momentum. He landed 2 precise blows to vulnerable spots, forcing his opponent to drop to one knee. After defeating the boss, he saw a message about a new level and the discovery of an additional skill. The new ability enhanced the energy absorption effect when using the previous skill. Without wasting any time, he immediately activated it, absorbing power from the body of the hobgoblin he had just defeated. The result was not long in coming. The amount of dark energy turned out to be significantly larger than usual. Feeling the power, he remembered the demon whose power was hidden deep within his mind. He used the power of this creature, so he realized that the seal was gradually weakening. This meant one thing. Very soon he would be able to regain all his true strength. After taking the crystal from his opponent's body, Aryan headed towards Hannah, as he had planned earlier. At dinner, the girl jokingly asked what was tastier, her dish or the restaurant's chicken. Aryan was somewhat confused, but chose the chicken, although he did so with some uncertainty. Hannah smiled, shared some of the meat, and asked about his friends or family. Suddenly confused, he dropped his fork and replied that he had no one close to him. Hearing this, the girl invited him to stay with her for the night, which genuinely surprised Aryan. Although embarrassed, he agreed, handing her money, at least for groceries or a phone. After a brief argument, Hannah finally accepted the money, albeit reluctantly. Then Aryan asked about the D-level gate, and learned that lizardmen lived inside. After dinner, they headed to the apartment, where Aryan was given the opportunity to spend the night in Hannah's brother's spare room. After saying goodbye to the girl, he lay down on something soft for the first time in 10,000 years and instantly fell asleep. In the morning, he set off for the D-level gate, walking inside with firm steps and beginning his search for enemies. He remembered Hannah's words. These creatures have poor eyesight, but they hear the slightest movement around them perfectly. One careless step is enough, and the entire pack immediately rushes at the victim with incredible fury. Therefore, the best weapon against them remained flame, which quickly and effectively destroyed enemies. Upon encountering 3 opponents, he used fire without hesitation and immediately consumed their bodies. During the battle, the figure of Esther, a member of the Andres Guild, flashed through my memory. Suddenly, a new group of opponents appeared, whom Aryan instantly incinerated and absorbed, raising his rank. As he was about to walk further, a voice from an unknown person was heard behind him, calling him to them. Looking at his clothes, they assumed he was a newcomer and offered to join their team. Hearing that it was the Andres Guild, Aryan refused without any hesitation and silently walked forward. This angered the group leader, who was dissatisfied with his actions and appearance. Smiling contemptuously, he assumed that the lizardmen would destroy the insolent loner themselves. He then suggested that their team would later take his body to teach him a good life lesson. After defeating several monsters and absorbing their bodies, he heard a voice that he already remembered well. This was the same team that had previously offered to join, and now they had come to watch his actions. Hearing about the break, the leader sarcastically mentioned respect, but Aryan's response angered him even more. He almost rushed into the attack, but his comrade stopped him in time, reminding him to stick to the previous plan. Knowing his enemy's weakness to noise, Arian struck his sword against his armor, making a loud, clanging metallic sound. Suddenly, the footsteps of monsters were heard around. The team activated the shield and watched the events unfold. They wanted to see the defenseless Arian torn apart by an angry pack of dangerous creatures. Instead, the hero activated his ability to use sound effects, began clapping loudly, and stomped his feet on the ground. The ground shook under the impact, the sound echoing through the forest, drawing even more predatory creatures to the scene. Hundreds and later thousands of lizardmen responded to the signal, filling the surrounding space. But Arian, without wasting time, jumped onto a tree and activated the ability to completely disappear from sound. Silence enveloped him completely. He moved imperceptibly, without making even the slightest rustle. So all the monsters that arrived, not sensing his presence, furiously attacked the members of Andras's guild. When the protective field suddenly disappeared, the leader looked back and saw that one of the girls on the team was already dead. Others fell after her, and he, seized by panic, began to beg Arian for help and apologize. But the main character remained cool-headed, firmly determined not to interfere in their hopeless situation. When the monsters finally killed everyone, Arian destroyed them himself, preparing to absorb the bodies of his fallen opponents. However, the system displayed a message stating that it was impossible to absorb objects protected by internal code. He remembered that he had heard of the system before, and decided to focus on absorbing monsters. After that, his dark energy reached the 30 mark, and the new strength clearly exceeded the previous ones. After activating the flame, he clearly felt a significant difference in power compared to the previous state. Having collected the magic crystal, Arian set off further, feeling his power gradually increasing. 3 days passed, and he finished his favorite meal while talking to Hannah in a calm atmosphere. The girl was worried about his overload, made tea, and shared the disturbing news. It was about a team killer, someone who fakes their rank and treacherously kills members of their own team. Later, once again on the battlefield, Arian wondered if he himself was the mysterious team killer. And if not, he should be extremely careful and reach an even higher level of skill as soon as possible. Having absorbed all opponents, he gained a new level, and the third skill became available to him. He again caused the flame to grow even larger and decided to test it on the magic stones. But one had only to look at them, and their surfaces would begin to melt under the sheer heat of his power. The new third skill allowed you to convert magic stones directly into powerful dark energy. Since he still had enough money, he decided not to sell the artifacts, but to absorb all the stones. Crouching down to concentrate, he activated the power of the heavens, and huge transparent wings grew from behind his back. Waving them, Arian flew up and set off on an aerial reconnaissance flight in search of the lizard folk bosses. During the flight, he heard a familiar voice coming from somewhere nearby and decided to descend lower. As he got closer, he realized it was Jim, his old friend who had apparently just been betrayed by 2 men. He barely kept his feet, defending himself from a barrage of blows, and still didn't fall thanks to his willpower. Arian watched the fight with interest, hesitating whether to intervene, remembering Jim's kindness. But when he noticed the dark energy on his enemy's sword, he stood before his friend's shield without hesitation. The first attacker rushed at him, but after a few quick movements he was already lying motionless on the ground. The next opponent tried to attack him but couldn't withstand even one powerful blow. After the battle, Arian leaned over the body, trying to question his enemy about the source of the dark energy. However, without receiving any response, he mercilessly slammed his opponent's head into the ground. Then Arian repeated his question, but already activated the power of the demon of fear, forcing it to speak. Under the influence of this dark energy, the man confessed that the power was given to them by the guildmaster Andras himself. The other attacker began to scream, trying to silence his comrade, but was instantly destroyed. After that, the first one began to talk about the ritual, but his body began to writhe convulsively. Blood poured from his mouth and nose. He wheezed and writhed until he completely lost the remnants of life. It looked as if some higher power had deliberately stopped the revelation of the truth about the ritual and the energy. Jim looked at Arian and clarified his name, as if remembering someone familiar from the past. After confirmation, he he and his companion began to express sincere gratitude for the unexpected and decisive rescue. At that moment, Jim admitted that he had previously misjudged Arian, perceiving him in a false and biased way. He remembered that he had to report the betrayal within Andras to the players from the Warren Guild. However, upon hearing the request to remain silent, he agreed without hesitation, wanting to help expose the traitors. As a sign of respect, he swore allegiance to Arian, promising to be on his side in the fight for truth. It was then that the hero recognized in Jim his old friend Palak, whom he had not seen since returning to Earth. The second team member who survived the betrayal thanked Arian and promised to repay him in the future. After a short farewell, the main character found out Jim's level and realized that he was not suitable for him. Joining the guild offered no advantages, so he proposed another form of cooperation without formalities. They exchanged numbers, and Arian assigned Jim to accompany Hannah after graduation. The hero himself focused on the prisoner whom he had previously left alive in order to find out the necessary information. Methodically and harshly, he began to beat the truth out of him, not stopping at painful methods. The prisoner resisted, but under pressure he confessed that they were capturing comrades for sacrifice. They were ordered to bring living people to complete rituals associated with dark energy. A man with a suitcase approached a familiar house where he reported the death of a friend in a mysterious attack. He described how a high-ranking fighter had destroyed his friend, so he was sacrificing him by killing him. Later, the main character was taken to a huge hall, where several people and a mysterious man were already waiting for him. He introduced himself as a preacher capable of endowing others with dark energy and enhancing their fighting power. To perform the ritual, magical stones and a person who would become the basis for the dark baptism were needed. Since no volunteers were found, he decided to use force himself and solemnly struck with his scepter. Dark energy erupted from a crack in space and directed itself into Arian's body, beginning a dangerous ritual. To complete the process, it was still necessary to absorb the victim's blood, creating pure energy without lethal effect. An ordinary person cannot withstand such a test, which is why the process is called a death rite. But Arian turned out to be an exception. His body absorbed the energy flows, the ritual dragged on and never reached completion. The man began to scream in panic, unable to believe that Arian had survived, and even asked to repeat the ritual again. Surprised by this audacity, he instantly rushed to the attack, but quickly realized that his strength was clearly not enough. In desperation, he ordered his subordinates to join the battle, hoping together to defeat an inexplicably strong enemy. Fire engulfed his body, and with all his fury he directed it at Arian, hoping to break his will. But in response, Arian also activated the flames, stunning his opponent, who took a step back. The thought suddenly flashed through the preacher's mind that the real Andras might be standing before him. Without a second's hesitation, he knelt down, recognizing Arian as a powerful, long-awaited savior. Calling him the invincible Andras, he convinced himself that the ritual had finally produced the desired result. Arian decided to use the situation to his advantage and successfully entered the role without arousing suspicion. Spreading his wings, he rose into the air and, announcing himself as Andras, ordered everyone to leave the premises. By wanting to be alone with the preacher, he created the appearance of control and absolute power. He began to ask in detail about the ritual itself and its details, receiving an unexpectedly large amount of valuable information. A man named Drake confessed to being initiated by an unknown person who wore a mask and posed as a demon. He appeared in the guild, promising everyone eternal life in exchange for loyalty to the demonic forces of the afterlife. However, there was really no choice, because anyone who refused was immediately killed by the mysterious stranger. It was out of fear of death that Drake agreed, even though he did not know where to look for this man or his accomplices. He received a single letter with orders to recruit new players and conduct rituals without delay. The cult's goal was to completely distort the Earth, turning it into a veritable hell among worlds. Upon learning of this, Arian activated the power, banned the rituals, and ordered Drake to gather new information. The hero himself remained in place, deep in thought, and then slowly headed towards his own home. There, a worried Hannah was already waiting for him. because he hadn't answered her calls for a long time and had disappeared without a trace. Arian sincerely apologized for the silence, after which they went to have dinner together in a cozy atmosphere. During the conversation, he learned that Hannah had reached the 2nd rank and had acquired a powerful B-level skill. She began to receive numerous offers from various guilds, but she only wanted to help Arian. The main character shared the news about Jim, with whom he planned for her to reunite. He assured Hannah that when she became even stronger, they would create their own invincible team. Together they will hunt in high-level gates and contain the threat of dark energy. Hannah eagerly agreed, and then set out on the table the dishes she had carefully prepared for dinner. Arian began to eat, and mentally made a promise to himself to save not only the world, but also his native land. He then headed to the player management, aiming to register his newly acquired level, but he quickly realized that he wouldn't be able to get it now, because the system needed magic stones to activate. Deciding not to rush, he allowed himself to rest a bit and change his usual rhythm for the first time in a long time. Without a clear plan, he remembered how he used to spend all his time reading comics on the ground. However, now he longed for a different life, and having noticed a computer club, he decided to go inside. After ordering a serving of ramen, he chose the most popular game and created a character to complete missions. His first achievement was killing a monster, for which he instantly received a certain amount of gold. His teammate was puzzled by Arian's actions and tried to understand what was happening. In response, he tried to explain briefly, even though he had already received his meal and was focused on eating. Without reacting to the game or his friend's words, he calmly finished his ramen and washed it down with a soda. But immediately after that, a death message appeared on the screen, which he did not notice in time. At that moment, an indignant female scream was heard nearby, causing everyone in the hall to look around. The angry girl's gaze fell directly on him, and she became even angrier when she saw the screen. Realizing that they were on the same team, she quickly approached him with the intention of sorting things out. In anger, she swung several times, and he only deftly dodged each subsequent blow. Finally, she asked if he was a member of the Mirror Guild, carefully watching his reaction. He calmly rejected all of the woman's assumptions, then asked if she herself belonged to a particular guild. She had already started to answer when she suddenly remembered the prohibition on disclosing her affiliation with the organization. Raising her head, she was surprised to see that Arian was not listening to her and was heading to the cash register to pay. She moved closer, insisting that he was an A rank, and this couldn't be a mere coincidence. But as soon as he showed his player card, and it showed a D rank, she almost fainted. While she was trying to make sense of what she had seen, Arian had already left the club, pondering her strength. He was amazed by the accuracy and speed of her blows, as he had to make a lot of effort to dodge. At this time, the girl jumped into the alley through the window and immediately established contact with her guild. It was later revealed that this mysterious stranger was actually a guild leader named Esme. She ordered the head of the Human Resources Department to investigate the demon-related cult. Arian's behavior made her suspicious, as he was the only one who managed to dodge her attacks. This impressed her interlocutor, because no D-rank player would be able to avoid such blows. There was a hypothesis that his documents could have been forged, or the true level could have been hidden. She instructed me to gather detailed information, and after ending the call, looked at the torn button, which she tore from Arian's clothes during a fight, which both took as a challenge on equal terms. And each of them, deep down, recognized that the opponent could be stronger than him. Arian decided that the next day, as soon as he received the map, he would immediately head to the gates of the new location. And Esme, returning to the club, noticed a drop in her rating and promised to kill him next time. The next day, he headed to the Troll Gate, where he learned that a formed team was now required to enter. Looking around, he noticed an unusual atmosphere. There was peace and indifference to the surroundings. His plan was to destroy this balance, so he decided to create chaos and chose a suitable victim for this. Activating the power of anger, he transferred the energy to the man, who instantly began shouting and inciting others. He recalled bullying at school, which only intensified emotions, and called on everyone to act immediately. He was joined by another man, and later a woman, united by a common desire to fight. The crowd in front of the gate quickly charged with energy and rushed inside without waiting for permission. Taking advantage of the commotion, Aryan jumped over the wall, sneaking into the enemy desert unnoticed. By activating his observation skill, he discovered the location of the goblins and where their leader was. Hearing the noise of the team that had already penetrated inside, he quickly moved directly towards the main boss. Arriving in front of him in an instant, Aryan struck a powerful blow with his sword, destroying the enemy with the first movement. Realizing that it was indeed the boss, he admitted that he had died from the excessive force of a single blow. Not wanting to stop there, the hero decided to completely clear the territory of all goblins. Blow after blow, without stopping, he cut down enemies, gradually advancing deeper into the map and destroying everything around. The system reported an improvement in the skill, so Aryan only accelerated his pace and did not stop his onslaught. It absorbed the bodies of the defeated, although the increase in dark energy was quite insignificant. When all the goblins were destroyed, the players arrived at the scene but found no enemies on the battlefield. Thinking this was another deception by the authorities, the disappointed players set off back, wanting to find out the truth. At that moment, Aryan joined the crowd, calmly walking through the gate with all the other people. People indignantly began to incite each other, turning the situation into a real riot at the entrance. Just then, the elite Huaran squad appeared, and with them a commander named Clark, with a cold gaze. With her authority, she instantly silenced everyone, restoring order among the players present. Clark made an official announcement, emphasizing the threat of team killers, and promised to check on everyone. By stating that they were checking specific individuals on the list, she made Aryan think deeply about the situation. He was worried that he might be the cause of the inspection, so he tried to behave as carefully and discreetly as possible. He didn't have time to think things through properly when Clark suddenly asked him for a map for a closer look. While she studied it, Aryan tried to learn more about the Tim killers while remaining calm. After a few short phrases, they parted ways, leaving the protagonist with new suspicions about the authorities. It seemed to him that they were looking for cultists, but he decided not to dwell on it and went home to rest. Soon they met Jim at the cafe as arranged, and Aryan introduced him to Hannah in person. Jim was impressed by the pair and jokingly called her his sister-in-law, commenting on the power of her new skill. Her ability to not only heal, but also strengthen allies and attack seemed almost unique. He noted that any guild would have accepted her without hesitation, but Hannah had no plans to join anywhere. This brought her together with Jim, who also did not belong to any organization, and they discussed the upcoming party. When Aryan calmed down a bit, he asked Jim about possible damage players for the team for efficiency. He immediately suggested 2 acquaintances he trusted, despite the fact that Aryan himself had never seen them before. Remembering his previous failed experience with the Allies, Aryan hesitated, but agreed to try anyway. He asked Hannah's opinion, and she immediately agreed because she wanted to improve her fighting skills more quickly. She dreamed of fighting alongside Aryan, and he advised her to be more careful and take her time. Jim, who had been following their conversation closely, smiled with emotion and changed the subject. He promised to soon send the coordinates of the gate where the team would go on their first hunt together. When Aryan asked why this particular gate, Jim replied that there was a minimal chance of team killers there. However, trolls lived there, who were stronger than lizard men, so they allowed them to level up faster. After that, they said goodbye, as Aryan was to head to the next gate for training and combat. Inside, he immediately used his observation skills to spot the goblins, and quickly destroyed them. Suddenly smelling the scent of human blood, he abruptly changed direction, dismissing the idea that it was the work of demon cultists. It seemed to him that this was the work of the Tim killers, because by the smell he determined that there could have been 5 or 6 victims. Arriving at the scene, he saw scattered human bodies, and then noticed a horrible creature eating them. Before him stood Cerberus, a monster from hell itself, roaring menacingly in the silence. Aryan didn't have time to fully orient himself when the beast rushed at him, and his attempts to attack with his blades were in vain. He dodged the blows, trying to set the enemy on fire, but this attempt was unsuccessful. Only by using his spear did Arian manage to knock the monster to the ground, causing it to roar with rage. Already thinking that victory was near, the hero stopped, but Cerberus rose and rushed into the attack again. Dodging another series of blows, Arian activated the power of the rift, destroying the floor right under the beast's paws. An attempt to finish off the monster with a spear again proved unsuccessful, as not a single blow harmed the enemy. The beast, without stopping for a moment, rushed into battle again, roaring with all hellish fury at every movement. Realizing that Cerberus would not retreat, Arian activated the power of heaven, directing the blades into the enemy's nostril. This blow did knock the monster off balance, causing it to fly back and briefly freeze in place. Despite its obvious injury, the monster rose to its feet again, breathing hot air from its mouth and blazing with fire. Arian recalled the old battles in Hell, understanding that all it took was the right moment for the decisive blow. He gathered his strength, waiting for the right moment, because he believed that experience gave him an advantage over the beast. And now the time had come. When the enemy suddenly froze, Arian prepared for another rush forward. However, unexpectedly for himself, Cerberus fell to the ground, completely losing the strength to fight. Immediately after that, the system sent a message about the victory and the discovery of a new ability in the rift, which immediately raised many questions in his mind, but due to the lack of facts, he decided not to analyze anything. Having absorbed the body of the defeated monster, Arian went out the gate, where a familiar figure from the computer club was already waiting for him. The woman introduced herself for the first time, and upon hearing her name, the hero realized that he was the head of the Red Rose Guild. Confirming his guess, Esme began to lay out all the data they had managed to gather about him. She mentioned the exact date of birth, indicated the place, and also reported the hero's 5-year disappearance. What surprised her most was the pace at which Arian gained experience and growth, which aroused some suspicion. She openly suggested the possibility of document forgery, but fingerprint analysis completely disproved this. When it became clear that the guy was clean, Esme voiced the idea of officially sponsoring him. The proposal was to raise Arian's level by giving him access to guild equipment. She also wanted to provide a temporary pass to the gate of any level, regardless of the hero's rank. In addition, she mentioned the possibility of providing housing or transportation, which seemed like a very generous offer. However, when it came to the several tasks that the guild expected from him, everything fell into place. With no time to discuss the details, Esme left Arian space to think about the decision. After carefully weighing everything and analyzing the potential benefits, the protagonist decided to accept her offer. Even after the agreement, she had no right to disclose the contents of the instructions without solid grounds and evidence. After a brief exchange of numbers, they headed to headquarters, where Arian was to be given his equipment. The attention of the crowd was attracted by a luxurious white Porsche with a familiar driver. A smiling Esme peeked out from the cabin and immediately called the hero, and he sat in the front seat without hesitation. Already on the way, Arian found out the cost of the car and almost fainted from shock, not believing what he heard. The girl asked if he wanted the same thing, and he enthusiastically began calling her his older sister. Upon arriving, he met James, the head of human resources, who was friendly. Next came the acting chief director of the guild, Fred, whose hostility was immediately felt. Despite this, Esme ordered James to get back to work, promising to personally escort Arian onward. Fred, suspecting something was wrong, decided to accompany them to the equipment depot himself. She explained that some equipment can only be obtained with a deposit. The rest is freely available, so the hero began to examine the weapons, listening carefully to the announced prices. Realizing that he didn't have enough money for the equipment he wanted, Arian just sighed. Fred took his short, "I see," as a sign of disdain, instantly switching to a rude tone. Sensing aggression in the director's voice, Arian decided to provoke by expressing his displeasure. Fred became so angry that he pulled out his sword and pointed it directly at Arian, but Esme quickly stopped him. She was outraged by the director's audacity and sternly ordered him to leave the warehouse immediately. Arian, still recovering from the attack, joked, calling Esme his sister, and made an unexpected proposal. Instead of a car, he asked her for weapons and armor that might be more useful in the future. Before she could answer, an angry Fred returned to the hall, pointing his sword at the hero. Intervening once more, Esme stopped the blow with one hand and threatened serious consequences for disobedience. Hearing this, Fred didn't dare argue, so he turned angrily and left the room for the second time. Esme apologized for her colleague's behavior and asked what kind of equipment a beginner needed. Arian briefly explained what he was looking for, but before he could finish, Fred appeared for the third time with a new condition. He offered his armor in case the hero won the battle, defiantly provoking his opponent. An angry Esme was about to intervene and stop another prank, but Arian unexpectedly agreed. She understood well that he had almost no chance against a 6th-ranked player and tried to refuse. But the hero was determined and was not going to back down, despite all warnings or doubts. Fred, remembering how Esme had once saved him, decided to use the moment for revenge. They headed to the training hall, where the director generously promised his opponent a 3-second head start. But Arian seriously warned him not to delay and draw his sword, for there would be no time left. Without wasting a moment, he sprang from his spot and in an instant delivered a powerful blow that threw Fred far back. His lightning-fast attack surprised everyone present and forced them to seriously reconsider their expectations. Arian began to taunt, showing off his strength when he saw Fred get up, trying to attack again. Noticing that Esme was closely following the fight, he decided to show even more of his abilities. Fred gathered all his strength and activated his most powerful skill, hoping to change the course of the match. But Arian, without losing his composure, used the power of darkness and instantly found himself behind his opponent. Instead of a direct blow, he used the force of the wave and with a sharp push knocked his opponent to the ground. Fred was unable to get up, and within seconds, paramedics were already nearby, providing him with emergency care. Esme apologized to Arian, promising that nothing like that would happen again. Examining the acquired armor, the hero asked with interest to slightly change its size to suit his own needs. Leaving his things for recycling, he set off on his way without stopping at the guild premises. Esme was left alone with her thoughts, wondering who this unusual newcomer really was. It seemed to her that Arian was capable of entering the top 8 rankers who are recognized at the world level. I didn't even rule out the possibility that he would become the first representative of Korea on the list of the strongest players on the planet. After all, even Elliot, who was considered the best, has not yet reached that coveted world level. Her thoughts were interrupted by James, who, upon learning of Fred's condition, looked depressed and alarmed. However, Esme remained adamant, insisting that Fred himself was to blame for his expulsion from the guild. Then James shared important news related to the activities of the Devil Cult. The authorities managed to introduce a spy into the cult, and the way for a direct operation will probably soon open. However, because of this, there is a risk of falling into a trap carefully prepared by attackers. Arian reflected on his own strength and development, noticing that progress became more difficult with each level. He realized that the higher the indicators become, the more difficult it is to achieve new results and grow further. The next day, he set off for the meeting, taking Hannah with him, who willingly accompanied him. Jim was waiting for them at the venue, introducing the 2 newcomers he mentioned earlier, Eric and Eva. Eva immediately took an interest in Hannah, cheerfully ran up to meet her and take a souvenir photo with her. Meanwhile, Eric approached Arian, greeted him politely, and told him about his skills and experience. After that, he helped the girls take a photo, acting friendly and without a hint of arrogance. Jim, meanwhile, turned to Arian, wanting to hear his impressions of this team's potential. The protagonist quickly assessed the situation, analyzing the skills of each of the newcomers individually. Jim and Eric possessed A-rank abilities, which already indicated a serious level of training. Eva and Hannah had B-rank skills, but showed good interaction and noticeable dedication to the cause. As a result, he decided not to refuse, but rather to go with them on a training mission. During the next raid, they passed through the gate and found themselves on a battlefield with a group of goblins. The team acted in unison, covering each other and maintaining a stable battle line. Hannah reinforced her allies while simultaneously attacking alongside Jim, Eric, and the determined Eva. After the battle was over, everyone turned to Arian, wanting to hear his opinion on their work. He acknowledged that they have potential, but there are still many aspects that need to be improved. Starting his analysis with Jim, Arian noticed that he relied too much on brute physical strength during combat. He then turned to Hannah, emphasizing that her reinforcement of Jim was inappropriate in that particular situation. She also entered the battle prematurely, instead of first taking a more advantageous position for support. Next came Eve's turn, who was too energetic in finishing off wounded enemies, wasting unnecessary resources. When she was attacked, she did not try to resist, but simply began to flee the battlefield in confusion. Eric, on the other hand, showed himself at his best. His technique was stable and his attacks effective. Considering his level and rank, he showed a worthy endurance, which earned respect even from Arian. After analyzing the teamwork, they moved on to check how the participants had absorbed the tips. During the next clash, the fighters acted much more confidently, coherently, and strategically. Arian was just about to praise them when he heard a loud scream. A demonic wolf was closing in on the group. Everyone froze in indecision until Eric, without hesitation, resolutely rushed at the enemy with full dedication. His attacks were powerful, but due to inattention, he was hit hard and fell to the ground. At that moment, Arian appeared before him, instantly activating the power of 1,000 and attacking with extraordinary speed. With one precise blow, he neutralized the monster, then immediately picked up Eric to help him stand up. The team reacted instantly, running to their comrade, providing assistance and checking his condition. Arian, meanwhile, wondered where Eric got such impressive strength from and whether everything was so simple with him. To make sure, he activated the warden's power and lifted Eric up, fixing his position. After that, a status window appeared in front of him, in which he noticed something absolutely incredible. Among the characteristics were the ability of the SSS rank, as well as the titles of the Chosen One and the Defender of the Whole World. He reread everything over and over again, not believing his eyes because Eric looked like the main character from a comic book. Considering all the circumstances, Arian realized that he could not afford to lose such a gifted young man. He didn't have the resources to support her like Esme did, so he decided to find another way to strengthen the bond. Afterwards, the team sincerely thanked him for the lives saved and the support provided, and the hero completed his training. Arian and Hannah were out together when the protagonist noticed a missed call on his device. He asked the girl to come back and have dinner without him, as he had urgent business and a meeting. At this time, Eric was at the bus stop, waiting for the bus heading to the Mir Guild mentioned earlier. Jim offered him to join that organization, but the guy had his own reasons for refusing. Suddenly, Arian appeared next to him with a serious look, suggesting that they move to a quiet place. They moved away from the people, and there Arian suddenly attacked the boy with an unusual intention. His action was an attempt to establish a connection, although it looked aggressive and raised many questions. Without letting Eric say a word, he reached out and stuck his hand into the boy's chest, activating the force. After that, a flow of dark energy arose. The force of subjugation began to act inside the body. The protagonist spoke words of command, implanting a new goal and rules of behavior in the student's mind. It made him forget everything that had happened and subconsciously strive for continuous improvement. Having completed the ritual, Arian disappeared just as unexpectedly, leaving the boy alone with himself. Eric came to his senses on the ground, feeling devastated, but not understanding what exactly had happened to him. His mind was clouded, and his heart was filled with anger, directed at the vice president of the Mir Guild. The only thing left in his mind was deep rage and the desire to destroy the one he considered his enemy. Having transformed Eric into a familiar, Arian continued to quietly follow him, having no intention of harming the young man. His life was of extraordinary value to the hero, as he considered the boy an important part of the future. Deep thoughts were interrupted by a call from Drake, the head of the cult with whom the hero had already dealt. Drake reported the appearance of a demonic monster at the B-rank gate, although no details were provided. Arian realized that defeating the creature would speed up his leveling, so he decided to set out immediately. After getting off the train, he headed towards the gate, in front of which a large crowd of people had already gathered. Everyone wanted to enter because the path was long, but the authorities blocked the passage and prohibited any movement. 10 deaths were reported, and the mutant seen inside resembled a lion in shape. The hero immediately realized that it was Buer, a 5-legged beast from the 2nd level of the hellish circle. His specialty was satiety. After destroying 5 creatures, he would fall into a deep sleep. Arian's plan was to wait for the moment of sleep and then deliver the fatal blow. While people were leaving, he called Esme to ask her to arrange access to the restricted area. Approaching the guard, he held out the phone and emphasized that it was the guild head himself speaking. After a brief conversation, entry was granted, and people began to gather at the passage again. At this moment, the Mir Guild team arrived, led by Captain Fury, who was smiling mockingly. He began to mock Arian and boldly suggested joining him so as not to die alone. The protagonist briefly considered the situation and agreed, remaining calm and strategically calculated. In his head, he quickly listed all the team members, realizing that this would be enough for the plan. The number of players matched the need. Buer had to get his fill and fall asleep, exposing his vulnerability. A few minutes before, Fury had already contacted Cedric, the vice chairman of the Mir Guild, reporting on Arian, who immediately ordered the hero to be publicly ridiculed because he behaved too confidently and looked suspicious. Standing before Arian, Fury realized that continuing to bully would only make him a laughingstock. So he silently walked towards the gate, encouraging the team to follow and begin searching for the mysterious monster. As they moved through the gate area, they occasionally hurled barbed taunts at Arian. At the same time, they mocked the Red Rose Guild, which they considered weak and without prospects. Arian's gaze focused for a moment on the history of this guild, which had its own reasons for rivalry. Once its chairman, Bart, was the owner of a large electronics company with huge capital. During the disaster 5 years ago, he and his son woke up as players and adapted quickly. Using their wealth and influence, they created the powerful Mir Guild, which later became one of the most famous. Their confrontation with the Red Rose had become a symbol of competition, and Arian planned to capitalize on it. It was too early to take sides, but the opportunity to squeeze benefits from both sides was growing. Activating the Warden's power, he noticed the giant shadow of Buer hiding behind a stone wall. Arian instantly decided to lure the monster by releasing a special scent that excites the predator's senses. The lion-like creature was rapidly approaching, and Fury's team began to hastily prepare for battle. It was at this moment that Arian finally revealed his true motives, but it was too late. Buer appeared in a flash, grabbed one of the players, and broke his spine in a terrible fit of rage. Ignoring all attacks, the monster continued its attack, ruthlessly killing 2 more in just a few seconds. The team desperately tried to stop the monster, but in vain. Not a single attack caused any damage. Eventually, Buer consumed 5 players, had his fill, and began to slow down, preparing for sleep. Arian deftly jumped onto the monster, combining 2 abilities that instantly formed a new combat skill. With just 1 powerful blow, he destroyed Buer, after which he received a notification of the Devil's Blessing. One of the conditions of the ritual was fulfilled, but due to the lack of details, the hero decided to absorb the monster's body. After that, he approached Fury, and after just 1 precise blow, he made him talk. Fury admitted that the order for public humiliation came from Cedric because of an old grudge against Esme. This incident became a personal matter for the vice chairman, which now affected the behavior of his subordinates. Arian immediately demanded to see a photo of Cedric, and while examining it, he noticed a certain resemblance to Eric. This coincidence aroused suspicion, leading the hero to assume there was a deeper connection between them. Then he gave Fury a new task, to play an important role in the future plan without asking unnecessary questions. Once outside, Arian loudly called for an ambulance for his recent opponent. When the journalists arrived, the hero began to tell the story of Fury's self-sacrifice during the fight. He reported that the lion monster attacked suddenly, instantly destroying almost the entire team without the slightest resistance. Only the captain remained in the battle until the end, covering Arian and ordering him to escape at all costs. It was thanks to these actions that the monster was destroyed, but Fury himself fainted, protecting the life of his comrade. Arian emphasized that he could not abandon his savior, so he carried him from the battlefield in his own arms. Over the next few hours, all the media wrote about the heroic act of the Mir Guild player at a critical moment. Esme was watching the news when Cheryl, the head of an influential guild called Sanare, visited her. They were having a serious conversation about a devilish cult that was previously only known to 5 key organizations. Both understood that spreading the word about the existence of the cult among ordinary people would cause real chaos. Their discussion was suddenly interrupted by the arrival of Arian, whose presence forced the guest to immediately bid farewell. He tried to convince Cheryl to stay, but she politely left the room without arguing. After that, Esme gave Arian a special pass to the super-dangerous S-level gate. She emphasized the deadly threat within, but Arian was not frightened, only intrigued. The guy admitted that he accidentally overheard a conversation about a devil cult and wanted to know more. He became curious as to why this particular guild was cooperating with the authorities in such a risky endeavor. Esme explained that in addition to the solid reward, the guild suffered losses and seeks revenge on the cultists. She assumed that the cult had serious power, which is why she asked to destroy its leader. Without hesitation, Arian agreed to help, ostensibly out of gratitude for the support in previous battles. However, he chose to remain silent about his true motives, hidden goals, and possible benefits. He was later given a personal car, and the hero set off without delay for the mysterious S-level gate. Once inside, he was amazed by the view. The boundless and quiet sea stretched out before him. There, Arian planned to summon a monster from hell, to which he had only recently gained access. He began a complex ritual that was supposed to create a portal, but something went wrong in the process. The rift opened not into hell as expected, but into a completely different dimension with unknown consequences. When the magical action was complete, the system assigned him a new familiar, the dragon child Echidna, which at that very moment fell to the ground, leaving behind a faint glow and a trace of energy that had not yet completely faded. Next came a strange stream of words in an unknown language, the meaning of which the hero could not recognize at all. Suddenly, a group of armed men appeared in front of him and immediately surrounded him. Arian instantly activated his ability, scanning the enemy's strength and looking for any chance of agreement. He addressed the strangers with a direct question, trying to understand who they really were. One of them called himself the Prince of the Arnan Empire. His name sounded proud, Reynold. Then Arian turned his attention to the rest of the group, among whom was an elf and even a dwarf. This surprised him. Such a combination of races was rare, and in this world it looked completely unnatural. Despite the tension, Arian approached Echidna to heal her wounds and calm her down. But the newcomers perceived this as a threat, immediately blaming the dragon for disasters and diseases. Reynold stood firm, ignoring Echidna's every word, even though she denied any involvement. The prince's team supported him angrily, not believing in the innocence of the creature lying on the ground. The people's reactions began to irritate Arian, and eventually he decided not to hold back his anger any longer. A battle began between the parties, in which each of the newcomers used their own attack technique. When Reynold learned that he was facing a demon, he immediately rushed to attack, not holding back his strength. Others joined him, and the battlefield filled with the names of blows and flashes of magic. Arian acted precisely and coolly, activating abilities and neutralizing opponents one by one. He noticed that enemies always called out the name of a move before performing it. Taking advantage of this, he shouted out a fake move called a blade cut to confuse them. And when he prepared for this very blow, Arian unexpectedly kicked him. The blow forced the opponent to his knees, and the fighting spirit suddenly died out, leaving silence. And later he ordered his comrades to flee, trying to avoid new victims and unnecessary bloodshed. That team refused to leave the battlefield, remaining by the prince's side despite all the risks and the threat of death. A young girl appeared before Reynold, begging to kill only her and let the rest return home. On his shoulders lay the responsibility for all the races and creatures of their world, and he hesitated with his decision. At that very moment she confessed her love, daring for the first time to voice feelings she had been hiding for a long time. Preparing for death, she accepted her fate. although her heart trembled with fear and hope at the same time. Arian did not accept this sacrifice, thinking about something completely different, about the loot and trophies after victory. He was about to deliver the final blow when the system reported a new type of creature nearby. Their nature was different from the monster he summoned, and therefore the system's operation changed. Guy's system was supposed to automatically return such aliens to their home worlds without outside intervention. The people in front of him began to disappear one by one, without having time to say anything or even say goodbye. Arian was about to destroy them, but he didn't even have time to swing his weapon. The enemies had already been absorbed by the system. He turned to Echidna, thinking about how their appearance connected to events on Earth. Then he remembered the moment when he himself got here, and realized that it was all his fault. The appearance of creatures and monsters in this world began since he received his abilities. Realizing that he couldn't change it now, he asked the dragon to shrink his body to a smaller form. While she fulfilled the request, the hero thought about the continent of Erno, her home world. A world where mages, dragons, and monsters existed side by side, competing and coexisting at the same time. He took Echidna to his place, and along the way she shared her story of childhood and loss. When she was still a child, her father suddenly disappeared, leaving behind only a shadow in her memories. She often read, seeking salvation in books, and tried to forget about loneliness. But later, Reynold appeared and blamed her for all the troubles, the plague, the drought, and the curse. As she told the story, tears streamed down her cheeks because no one believed her, even though she was not guilty. Arian assured her that she was safe now and promised that he would be there for her no matter what. Because he also grew up without parents, in an orphanage, watching other children find families. He always wanted only one thing, for someone to truly love him and accept him for who he is. They were met at home by Hannah, who immediately hugged Echidna and called her an extremely cute creature. Arian inquired about her growth and progress in the hunt to make sure everything was going well. In response, she heard sincere gratitude for the support and the acquaintance with Jim, which changed her life. Arian woke up feeling very tired, so he slowly made his way to the kitchen, where Echidna was having breakfast. At first he didn't notice the change, but after a moment he realized that a girl was sitting in front of him, not the usual dragon. Echidna herself was surprised by the new form. At night she felt strength and woke up already human-like. Arian jokingly asked her to return to her dragon form, not expecting a real reaction. She immediately complied with the request, but miscalculated her strength and almost destroyed the apartment to the ground. Embarrassed, she apologized for the harm she had caused, not wanting to inconvenience anyone. Then Hannah, with a smile, suggested buying new clothes that would befit a young dragon. They invited Arian to go with them, but he politely declined, as he had other important matters to attend to. The hero went to Esme to tell her about the dragon's summoning and resolve legal issues. In particular, he asked for help in completing the paperwork so that the creature would have a personality. At the same time, he corresponded with Hannah, who sent a photo of Echidna in pajamas, causing a smile. Esme asked who he was, but Arian assured her that his origins didn't matter now. He was about to ask for something else, but he was interrupted by the unexpected appearance of Clark, who approached Esme. The surprised meeting turned into a brief greeting, and Arian moved on to the main question. He requested official permission to enter the S-rank gate, knowing it would cause concern. Esme was really worried, but he explained that he knew who lived there: giants, ogres, wyverns. A particular threat was the creature El Cuero, a water monster that lurked in the depths of the lakes. Clark was suspicious that Esme had agreed so quickly, but she later calmed down. She trusted her friend's decision because she knew she wouldn't take risks without good reasons. Afterwards, the girls discussed the situation with the Devil Cult, which still remained elusive. Its leader has still not been caught, although the Guild and the authorities have joined forces in the search for the criminal. However, there was hope. The agent who infiltrated the cult received extremely important information. The video contained evidence of cult activity, and the agent only agreed to hand it over in person. The meeting was to take place the very next day, at the place where Arian planned to hunt. Echidna returned home in a new outfit, which attracted Arian's attention and aroused sincere admiration. He briefly complimented her appearance, after which they immediately set off together on another hunt. Before leaving, the hero promised to go hunting with Hannah soon so as not to break the agreement. Arriving at the S-rank gate, Arian gave Echidna some important instructions on how to behave in battle. Then he activated the Overseer's ability to better navigate the environment of dangerous creatures. Soon, a giant ogre appeared on the path, looking aggressive and ready to attack. The hero tried to lure him to himself, and then, using force equal to 1,000 ordinary blows. Despite his efforts, this did not harm the creature, so he turned to Echidna for help. Through joint efforts, they managed to destroy the ogre, although it required a significant expenditure of energy. But just as they had time to catch their breath, several wild wyverns swooped down from the sky. Understanding the threat, Arian decided that the best way out would be to immediately flee this place. He grabbed Echidna tightly, activated his wings, and flew upward, hoping to break away from his pursuers. However, the wyverns turned out to be clever. One of them tore Echidna's dress right during the flight. Feeling humiliated and furious, she instantly changed form, transforming into a powerful dragon. Her scream tore through the air and she charged into battle, destroying the predators one by one without mercy. Immediately after the intense battle, Echidna fell asleep, tired from the loss of magic and the powers she received from Arian. When she woke up, she immediately reassured him, assuring him that everything was fine with her and that he shouldn't worry. Despite this, she was worried about her torn outfit, to which the hero promised to buy her a new one and asked her to be more careful. He advised to restrain transformation, as it could destroy the environment or harm people. But it was thanks to this release of power that she was able to absorb a lot of magic and become much stronger. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud noise. 2 new ogres, even larger than the previous ones, were rapidly approaching them. Arian carefully placed Echidna on the ground, covering her with his body, and prepared to take the fight upon himself. But suddenly 2 strangers appeared and instantly dealt with both monsters on the spot. They were Gilbert, the head of the Robbers Guild, and Elliot, the first ranker of Korea and the leader of the Hanul faction. They offered their help to support Arian and Echidna, who looked very exhausted. While Elliot offered to lead them to the exit from the location, Gilbert watched the hero warily. Something about Arian's behavior made him suspicious, but he decided to keep quiet about it for now. The hero politely refused the offer and, leaving the gate, woke Echidna for a new journey. They set off for the shopping mall, but on the way the dragon caught the scent of human blood from the alley. Sensing danger, they instantly changed their route and headed there, preparing for anything. Previously, an undercover agent operating in a cult managed to record important evidence despite the ban. He was only able to transmit a signal to headquarters, after which he was discovered by the enemy and beaten. He managed to escape, but his body refused, even though his willpower would not allow him to stop or give up. The agent had one goal: to deliver the data chip, even if it cost him his own life. He fell in a narrow alley, unable to get up, and that's where Arian and Echidna found him. With a last-ditch effort, the wounded man passed the chip, giving the order to pass it on, but he lost consciousness before then. Not understanding what had happened, Arian immediately activated the Overseer's power to read the data about the stranger. But the indicators indicated that he did not leave the gate, which raised even more questions for the main character. So he decided to look through the contents of the chip, hoping to find a clue or some important information. It turned out that there was only one video, and to the hero's great surprise, it was a frank adult movie. Arian was extremely confused, as he had not seen anything like it in over 10,000 years. It was at that moment that strangers began to appear nearby, rapidly approaching the scene of the incident. It later turned out that these were members of a demonic cult who were very interested in the content of that video. They began to question the hero, but he had already decided that the chip must be protected at all costs. A fight broke out, and Arian nearly destroyed his opponents, forcing them to show their true colors. The cultists unleashed dark energy, partially transforming into demons, to maintain their advantage. Despite this, the hero used one of the most powerful techniques, destroying the crowd with several devastating blows. After the fight, he decided to watch the video again, suspecting he might have missed something important. And at that very moment, Esme and Clark appeared from above, surprised by Arian's presence in the deserted alley. He was nervous that they might not have had time to see the contents of the video, but both girls demanded that he return the chip immediately. It turned out that the recording is of extraordinary value and is key evidence in the investigation into the democracy cult. Due to Esme's insistence, he had to give the chip back, although he still didn't know what exactly was recorded on it. Clark, meanwhile, checked on the agent's condition, but the man was already dead, and it was too late to help him. Then Arian briefly told her everything he knew, but their conversation was interrupted by Esme's sudden exclamation. She had already watched the video and suspected that the main character had replaced it with another recording. But Clark reminded us that some guilds encrypt important data, replacing it with adult content. Decoding such a recording requires special equipment that is only available at their organization's headquarters. Before leaving, Arian introduced Echidna to Esme, who did not expect the summoned dragon to be a child. Upon arriving at Huaran headquarters, Esme immediately reported the loss of an agent in the surveillance zone. She also ordered the video to be decrypted and expressed her intention to contact a commander named Lance. This commander had tremendous authority and power. Only Elliot himself was able to resist him. But he was on a business trip, so there was no way to contact him or rely on his help. After some time, the team reviewed the already disclosed recording, which contained conversations about the Cardinal. That was the name of the leader of a demonic cult who had ties to one of the most powerful guilds. They also learned that in 3 weeks, the cult was planning to complete some kind of large-scale challenge. Arian concluded, "The Cardinal is extremely powerful and is supported by an influential force." It also became apparent that they were planning to bring something dangerous right to the surface of the earth. And the cult is not run by isolated fanatics, but by people with the support of a high-level structure. The hero decided to start with the guild, rejecting those who were already investigating the events. Direct pressure will only undermine the reputation, as the use of force will cause unwanted repercussions. So Arian came up with a cunning plan, and proposed using the cult mania for newcomers. He knew that the enemy was hunting players with low ranks but abnormally high attributes. In addition, disappearances have recently become more frequent in the lower-level gates of various regions. Arian suggested spreading rumors that extremely talented players had appeared there, and that the Red Rose organization is keeping an eye on them to stir up the cult's interest. He was convinced that they would not be able to resist the temptation because they sought demonization above all else. Arian did not tell anyone about their fanatical goal, but it became the basis for his future actions. After that, the team began discussing who could be used as live bait. The guilds refused to risk their own people, but Arian already had a candidate in mind. He remembered Eric, a capable but still underrated rookie who was a perfect fit for the plan. Who, upon returning home, immediately went to his mother, who was seriously ill and needed constant care and attention. Arian, meanwhile, watched from afar, carefully hiding and at the same time reading news about young Eric's successes. Behind all the rumors about him was journalist James, who had a talent for creating sensational headlines. And when the guy left the house, the main character followed, activating his disguise for safety. Eric headed towards the C-rank gate, where he immediately noticed Hannah, who looked exhausted and pale. But she assured him that everything was fine. She was just worried because Arian hadn't shown up for a week. Despite their messages, she was still worried, feeling his absence especially acutely. The team tried to calm her down, and Eric emphasized the importance of development to reach the level of a mentor. From the sidelines, Arian heard everything and felt proud of his students, who did not stop working even without him. At the same time, he saw how difficult it was for Hannah and little Echidna, but he had to finish the job without wasting time. Inside the gate, the team skillfully defeated the ogre, quickly, accurately, and without unnecessary expenditure of energy or strength. After the battle, they began collecting magic stones, acting in unison, like a well-trained group. The protagonist watched and was even more proud of them, seeing the fruits of his own hard work. However, something worried him because the cult had not yet manifested itself, which seemed quite suspicious to him. So Arian activated the Overseer's power, but at first he saw nothing that could pose a threat. But suddenly he noticed two strangers who were instantly killing ogres, heading towards Eric's team. The team had just destroyed another ogre when a new dangerous monster suddenly jumped out from behind Hannah. They had already prepared for battle, but suddenly the creature was destroyed, and an unfamiliar young man in white emerged from the shadows. This was Cedric, the son of Bart, the head of the Mirror Guild, known for his wealth rather than personal power. The guy introduced himself as Eric's brother, although Eric was in no hurry to acknowledge the connection or trust in the stranger. Finally, Cedric confessed that he wanted to sacrifice Eric, fulfilling the orders of a demonic cult. The team immediately reacted, preparing for battle, but the boy explained that he was not going to touch Hannah. He had other plans for her, which he said were supposed to be much more interesting than a simple murder. Eric couldn't stand it and rushed into battle, but Cedric easily parried the first attacks, acting calmly and confidently. The fight continued until a strong blow from Cedric threw Eric against the wall, which immediately changed the situation. The young man's weapon was unusual, techno-magical, with motion sensors that anticipated the enemy's actions. It guided the wearer's body itself, allowing them to instantly respond to a threat with absolute precision. Cedric was about to strike the final blow when Jim suddenly appeared nearby and pushed Eric away. He covered his friend with a shield, receiving a wound, but saved him from a possibly fatal blow. Enraged, Eric, charged with Hannah's energy, tried to launch a powerful counterattack with all his might. The attempt again proved futile. Cedric not only parried the blow but also attacked at the same time, forcing his brother to retreat. At the same time, memories of his childhood, where Eric always managed to be the best at everything, were swirling in the young man's head. In studies, sports, and combat training, he consistently surpassed everyone, leaving Cedric in the shadows. This gave rise to envy in him, which turned into bitterness, and later into a desire for revenge and recognition. Cedric copied his brother's most powerful blow, and activating it, severely wounded him. But at that moment, Hannah ran up to them, trying to heal Eric, followed by Eve with a shield for protection. Eric lay exhausted, crushed by his own weakness, unable even to get to his feet. He was torn by thoughts of powerlessness, fear for his friends, and inability to protect those he held dear. But suddenly a strange voice sounded in his head, asking if he wanted true strength to fight. Meanwhile, Arian watched from afar, and as soon as he realized who the fighters were, he prepared to intervene. He was about to rush to help when he heard a shrill cry agreeing to the offer. At the critical moment, Eric awakened a hidden power within himself, similar to a god, and instantly attacked the enemy. His blow broke through Cedric's protective barrier, causing him to lose his balance and fall back. However, at the second blow, Cedric's personal guard appeared, who with a single blow threw Arian aside. The guard struck again, and Eric, barely conscious, no longer had the strength to fight any further. He accepted the idea of imminent death, asking forgiveness from his friends for failing to protect them. But at the last moment, Arian appeared, stopping his opponent's blow with one hand, without even looking away. Then he easily pushed the enemy back and assured Eric that he would explain everything personally later. Quickly assessing the situation, Arian ordered the entire team to immediately take cover in a safe location nearby. The enemy did not expect such a powerful force, so he instantly changed tactics, retreating a few steps. Cedric, without hesitation, ordered the guard to activate his demonic form to confront the hero. He transformed without hesitation, revealing his true essence, filled with dark, almost wild power. However, Arian was fully prepared for this, and destroyed his opponent with just one powerful blow. Without stopping, he rushed after Cedric, who was trying to escape while simultaneously recruiting his father. The hero hit him from behind, but left him alive, ordering him to finish the conversation with Bart. During the call, Arian identified himself as the one holding his son hostage and summoned Bart to the gate. The guild leader initially decided that he was acting on orders from the authorities and began to think about a defense plan. But as soon as he realized that the attacker was an independent fighter, outside the control of the government, he was overcome with rage. Arian gave Bart only 20 minutes to arrive, and after saying goodbye, Cedric began to beg for mercy. He asked what the hero wanted, but instead he heard a short and clear answer about peace, without any explanation. Without further ado, Arian activated the Conqueror's power and headed with the team towards the exit. Clark and Esme were already waiting for them at the exit, whose sudden appearance caused surprise and slight bewilderment among their friends. But instead of greeting her, Esme immediately took an interest in Hannah, and an involuntary conversation about Arian began between them. They asked each other about their relationship with the hero until Arian himself intervened, reminding them of the mission. The team headed to safety as the hero demonstrated the hostage, explaining the situation to the others. Arian confirmed that Cedric had taken the bait and assured him that the boy's father had already set out here in a fit of rage. The girls doubted whether Bart would act as emotionally as Cedric, but the hero remained confident in his words. And then the armored cars arrived, from which Bart angrily emerged, surveying the area around him. He quickly realized that the guilds Warren and Red Rose, whom he had long suspected, were behind all this. However, the real anger was caused by the desire to see the person he was talking to on the phone during the call. Arian stepped forward without fear and threw the bound Cedric at Bart's feet, shocking Esme and Clark. Bart immediately began asking his son if he was okay, but in response he heard an unexpected question. With fear in his eyes, Cedric barely uttered, "Who is this man in front of him?" unable to hold back his trembling. The enraged father could not bear the insult and rushed forward, trying to hit Arian without hesitation. But at the same moment, Esme activated her power to protect the newcomer from the attack, preventing the blow. A fierce battle broke out. Esme held back the enemy and Clark supported her, sparing no effort or time. At this moment, Arian calmly watched everything, with an ironic smile that only angered Bart more. His anger was growing with every passing moment, but the girls tried their best to keep the situation under control. Then Esme used the shackles, but they were ineffective. Bart easily tore them apart, moving forward. Inexorably heading towards Arian, he ignored the wounds, his eyes burning with rage and a thirst for revenge. Clark, although seriously wounded, gathered her remaining strength, stood up and struck the enemy with her sword with all her might. The blow was not fatal, but it made Bart stop. He staggered and changed the direction of his attack. For a moment it seemed that he would be able to capture Arian, but the hero reacted quickly, seizing the initiative. Calmly and confidently, he grabbed Bart by the hair, smiling condescendingly like a true winner. At Warren headquarters, Esme demanded an explanation from Arian about what exactly happened to Cedric after their meeting. She was concerned about the nature of his actions, but Arian assured her that it didn't matter, as the cooperation was mutually beneficial. Gritting her teeth in irritation, she agreed to continue the mission, realizing it would be too late to return. After that, Esme went to Bart, intending to extract at least a shred of important information from him. However, he remained stubbornly silent, refusing to say anything that could harm his former business. Then Esme resorted to force, but even under the pressure of physical pain, he remained stubbornly silent. Arian approached, offering a compromise. He would restore Cedric's memory if Bart told the truth. This only angered the former guild leader, and he began to threaten, throwing words about hell. But in the end, he gave up, confessing that 8 months ago he had met a mysterious man in a red mask. He promised to turn Bart into the devil if he supplied the required number of victims. The offer seemed crazy, but Bart agreed. He believed in the eternal life of demons. He was convinced that demons had been living for over 1,000 years, hiding in all corners of the world. For the sake of immortality, Bart hunted down players who were sacrificed during dark ceremonies. Some guild members have already received dark energy, although Bart himself has not yet had access to it. He needed time to complete his training, otherwise he would become a monster unable to control himself. The cult intended to summon the devil, but Bart only knew about the spatial wall that had weakened a month ago. This strangely coincided with the moment when Arian returned to this world after his absence. Arian realized that it was his return that had weakened the spatial wall, opening the way for demonic forces. He assumed that monsters and demons would soon unite, and then a massive invasion would begin. The situation seemed critical, so he immediately asked about the location of the cult's main headquarters. However, Bart knew nothing. He suspected that the preparations were already complete and the plan was in effect. Then it turned out that the Mir Guild was not the only one supporting the cult, and this complicated the whole matter. Meanwhile, the cult itself already knew about Bart's defeat, but considered it a minor loss. They were supported by other guilds, and therefore their resources and influence remained high. In addition, help arrived from the Brotherhood, which brought with it a demonic crystal. This artifact was filled with dark energy, although there were no instructions for further action. Therefore, the Cardinal decided not to wait and activate the first stage, starting with El Cuero. At this time, Arian, Clark, and Esme left the building where Bart was being held. Before that, Clark promised Arian a proper reward for cooperating with the authorities. Finally, the main character returned home, where he was met by an excited and tearful Echidna. She assumed Arian had disappeared because of her mistakes, but he sincerely apologized for his sudden escape. Promising never to leave her again, he stayed to have dinner with her and Hannah. The meal was already waiting for him, as Hannah had prepared it in advance, sensing that he would return. The next day, the entire team gathered around Eric at the hospital to hear the news from Arian. He partially changed the truth, saying that he had been following the student after the rumors appeared. He stated that he was acting as a mentor, preparing for a possible attack by a shadowy organization. Hannah, not holding back her emotions, expressed her feelings without mincing words. Arian apologized to her once again, calling her an important part of his family. To this, Hannah replied that she wanted to be communicated with as freely as she was with Esme. The team silently watched the romantic atmosphere that arose between the two of them. Suddenly, Echidna interrupted the moment, sitting between them and holding out a tangerine that had already been peeled. With this gesture, she easily relieved the tension, making her friends laugh and lightening the atmosphere. Taking advantage of the pause, Eric asked what would happen to Bart and Cedric after their arrest. Arian reported that both are currently in prison under the supervision of state forces. He also added that the state decided to help Eric financially, knowing his difficult situation. In addition, his mother will receive full treatment, as has already been officially agreed. Eric couldn't hold back his tears, not knowing how to thank him, which made Arian feel ashamed of his previous actions. Eric gathered his courage and decided to share with his friends the truth about his SSS rank skill, which he had been hiding for a long time. He also mentioned an unusual system message that mentioned a malfunction and his selection as a defender. The date of the awakening, which coincided with Arian's return to the team, was particularly alarming. This coincidence made him suspicious, but he decided to put aside his thoughts for now and focus on resting. Arian wished his student a speedy recovery and was about to leave when another surprise occurred. The team began to persuade him to stay, as if he were their master, and asked him to be with them. This instantly confused the hero, taking the request too literally and emotionally. Embarrassed, he hurriedly said goodbye and jumped out the window, leaving his friends in good humor. Later, Arian went hunting with Echidna to relieve some of the stress after a strange incident. After the battle was over, he gained a new skill that would only become available after demonic transformation. He didn't have time to properly comprehend what he had just achieved when a bullet rang out. It was Hannah on the line. She and her mother were moving into a new apartment and invited the hero to join them. Arriving there, Arian admitted that the Red Rose Guild had given them housing for support. Echidna asked about his plans for tomorrow, and the hero replied that he had the day off. He agreed to go for a walk with her, which Hannah unexpectedly decided to join in on. The next morning, they went to the mall together to buy new clothes for Echidna. The hero watched the girls try on things, laugh, and easily find common ground. He was happy to see how the two, who were so different, began to be sincere friends. The hero noticed the food court and, after hearing Hannah's explanation, decided to order all the available dishes at once. As he began his meal, he tried mixing several dishes together and surprisingly got an extremely pleasant taste effect. Hannah jokingly covered Echidna's eyes with her hand so that she wouldn't think of repeating the culinary experiment. In the midst of dinner, Elliot appeared and invited the hero to join his own guild, Nahul. He promised luxurious estates, cars, and billion-dollar fortunes, trying to impress with his wealth. However, Arian refused, as he had no intention of working under anyone's guidance, even on such generous terms. Then Elliot offered legendary equipment created from the highest-class monster materials. It had a unique property. After the binding ritual, only the chosen owner could use it. This feature really interested Arian, but even it couldn't change his decision. After receiving another rejection, Elliot left his business card and said goodbye without a single word. After the meeting, Arian went to Esme to learn more about the persistent player's past and intentions. From her, the hero learned that during the formation of the World Rankers rating, Elliot could not hold back his emotions. He then lost to a Japanese player named Barton, the famous owner of the legendary Eye of Susano. While the conversation continued, they headed to the basement where Clark was already waiting for them with good news. She prepared the reward found during the search of the Mir Guild, which she intended to show in person. Among the gains was legendary equipment, albeit not with the best initial characteristics. However, it contained a new skill and the function of strengthening other parameters through further development. Arian did not visually show interest, but a careful look betrayed his inner reaction. Thanking him for his trust, Arian threw on his coat and the ritual immediately began, where the equipment confirmed its connection to him. Esme suggested a sparring session to test the power of the new equipment and better understand the hero's potential. She also wanted to know what was the reason for Arian's rapid success in recent weeks. Having received consent, they headed to the training hall, where they first thoroughly warmed up their muscles before the fight. After the conditional signal, the fight began. Both skillfully dodged attacks and looked for an opportunity to strike. Arian blocked blows with ease, sometimes even allowing himself to utter a few words without losing his vigilance. But in the end, Esme activated the binding spell, trying to limit her opponent's movements and seize the initiative. However, the hero deployed his wings in time, allowing him to avoid the restriction and maintain his advantage. Arian then used the power of the Kraken, creating additional threats that Esme skillfully avoided in battle. Then there was an explosion, followed by a powerful sound wave that temporarily lowered the opponent's alertness. Taking advantage of the momentary advantage, Arian unleashed the power of 1,000, combined with the destructive energy of the void. Noticing the threat, Esme decided not to take any risks and focus solely on defensive actions. The hero deliberately aimed his final blow past her, destroying the wall behind him, thereby hitting his opponent. The force and precision of the action made Esme recognize Arian's superiority, even if it wasn't said out loud. The hero extended his hand, after which they exchanged words, but suddenly Clark's indignant reaction was heard. She did not expect destruction of this scale and immediately announced that the hall was being temporarily closed for renovations. Arian wondered how he could cover the costs, because the amount for the restoration was truly enormous. It was possible to obtain the magic stone of the ogre giant, but it required significant resources and a lot of time. Instead, he proposed another idea: hunting El Cuero, a boss monster from the depths of the lake. This opponent was considered extremely difficult, as close combat underwater was practically impossible, and because of the magic-resistant skin, it was difficult to inflict damage with ranged attacks. But Arian wanted to win not only for the money, but also to overcome the player-level limit. Because everyone who develops faces the limits of possibilities and loses the chance for further growth. The best solution is to challenge a boss monster, which helps you push the boundaries of your own abilities. Esme was also going through something similar, so she agreed to join the dangerous ordeal. There were still few of them left, so Clark decided to join, partly out of guilt. Echidna was added to the team, but another melee fighter was missing. Clark took care of that. Time passed, and at the gate to the S-rank zone, Arian warmed up, destroying one of the simpler monsters. Later, a team appeared, where the hero met Ronnie, the commander of the 2nd Warren Corps. During a brief conversation, Arian approved his participation, giving a silent approval and a gesture of support. But while he was talking to Clark, Ronnie flared up with jealousy that didn't go unnoticed by outsiders. He immediately inquired about the relationship between Arian and the girl, but did not receive a clear answer. Without focusing on the personal, the team returned to a plan of attack where the stone giants were at the heart. Everyone began to fasten chains with anchors along the beach, preparing a trap for the otherworldly creature from the depths. Arian dove into the water and used the power of sound to attract El Cuero's attention from the very bottom. The monster was emerging from the depths, so the team gathered and prepared for the moment when the creature broke through the surface. As soon as El Cuero jumped out of the water, Echidna instantly deployed a protective barrier to contain the force of the impact. Arian picked up Clark and Ronnie, after which they together threw the chains directly onto the body of the giant monster. The metal quickly wrapped around the opponent, wrapping around his torso and firmly anchoring itself thanks to magical hooks. Seeing the monster trying to dive into the depths again, Arian jumped into the water. With a blow, he sent the monster flying, disrupting its planned escape into the watery abyss and confusing its course. Without wasting time, the hero jumped straight into the creature's mouth, finding himself inside its slippery belly. Inside his body, he protected himself with an echidna barrier that kept out harmful substances and pressure from all sides. Meanwhile, Clark and Ronnie sensed electricity on the surface and backed away to avoid electrocution. Arian burst through the monster's internal tissues, emerged from its mouth, and gave a conditional signal. The gesture meant that the trap had been sprung, and El Cuero himself was chained and completely immobilized. Having received the sign, Esme began to rapidly jump over the stone giants, awakening their power. The colossi came to life under the pressure of her magic and pulled the monster, tightening the chains with each step. The monster jerked sharply, breaking the tension of the chains, and all the stone giants fell to the ground, losing their balance. Arian instantly realized that El Cuero had not weakened, so he ordered Esme to bind everyone with reinforced chains. These magical chains were to encompass not only the giants, but also Arian himself, to avoid another breakdown. The attempt was successful, and the team finally managed to pull the monster completely onto the lake shore. As soon as the monster's body touched land, it rushed at Echidna, who approached Arian with genuine concern. Clark and Ronnie spotted the attack in time, so they stood in the way and covered it, pushing El Cuero back. The hero, assessing the situation, ordered Echidna to deal with the weakened giants who had lost their strength. Destroying them turned out to be simple, so she quickly finished the job while the others focused on the main enemy. Clark and Ronnie were the first to enter the battle against the beast, delivering pinpoint strikes to vulnerable areas. Esme entered the battle after them, activating several skills at once, but even that was not enough to win. Arian realized that additional strength was needed and delved into his subconscious, searching for a solution. Before him opened the expanse of a dark lake, over which hung 3 doors, glowing with a magical glow. He realized that it was too early to use the power that was hiding behind the door because he was not ready for it. Instead, he gathered some of the black water into his palm, filling himself with the energy it held. Power surged through his body, activating almost every available skill and preparing a blow of unprecedented power. Arian drove his spear into the beast's body, causing a blast wave that spread across the entire coast and shook the air. This blow increased his combat performance while also fulfilling the second condition of the Devil's Blessing. But the energy expenditure was so great that he realized he lacked the strength for the victories ahead. While the hero concentrated, the other team members bombarded him with questions about the unfamiliar attacks. At this moment, Echidna announced that all the stone giants had been finally destroyed and no longer posed a threat. It seemed that the hunt was over, but Arian immediately noticed the lack of a report of the monster's death. He called on everyone to be alert, and for good reason. El Cuero's body suddenly shuddered, radiating darkness. The monster transformed, growing into a demon with massive tentacles, and tried to flee the battlefield. Esme rushed after him, grabbing him with her chains, then passing him a few more so the others could hold her down. Suddenly, a creature appeared before everyone, taking the form of a dragon, causing general astonishment. It was Echidna in her true form, which Arian immediately recognized and explained to the team who she really was. In her dragon form, she destroyed the transformed El Cuero completely with one powerful blow. This act earned Arian a huge amount of points, significantly increasing his status and combat rating. When the battle was over, everyone went together to the remains of the monster to check its source of power. Moving along the body, they came across a hole from which dark energy, surrounded by tentacles, was coming out. Inside lay a magical stone that became the source of El Cuero's transformation and unusual power. Arian felt a powerful dark radiation emanating from the stone and quickly realized that it was of artificial origin. Suspecting that a devilish cult was behind everything, he shared his thoughts with the team, particularly Clark and Esme. The two expressed a desire to explore the crystal more deeply, while Arian secretly began preparing for the absorption. Using lightning energy, he quietly activated it and directed it at the monster's body, distracting it. As the team watched the monster's body shudder, Arian quickly absorbed the crystal. And then he lied, saying that the stone had simply disappeared, and added that such artifacts disappear from human touch. By doing so, he diverted suspicion, forcing everyone to believe his explanation, which left no room for doubt. The system immediately informed him of the increase in dark energy, by 3 points at the expense of the demon. This increase was significantly greater than after hunting 100 orcs, when the rate remained stable. Later, at Huaran headquarters, Clark gave Arian and Esme 5 billion each from the trophy sales. These funds were obtained from the sale of monster bodies and magic crystals collected during the last battle. Clark also mentioned that El Cuero's tail spines could be used to make a unique and extraordinary sword. However, the news did not arouse enthusiasm, as none of those present had the appropriate characteristics for the weapon. Inside, Arian thought of Eric, a man who could make perfect use of the new sword. Meanwhile, Eric, along with Hannah, Jim, and Eve, had to make their way through a B-rank dungeon. Their journey was interrupted when a large minotaur suddenly appeared before them, ready for battle. But suddenly he was knocked down by another minotaur, much larger, more powerful, and more dangerous. The team instantly oriented themselves, entered the fray, and clearly executed Eric's combat commands. With just a few decisive attacks, they were able to bring down even this mighty beast with their combined efforts. 2 weeks later, Arian was invited to the central headquarters of Huaran to deliver the newly created unique sword. Then Clark suggested moving on to informal communication, and the hero immediately remembered the stone. He asked about the research results, but Clark admitted that the search for analogs had yielded no results. Although they continued to hunt monsters with potential crystals, all attempts remained futile. Meanwhile, within the walls of the Devil's Cult, the Cardinal was informed of El Cuero's death, which angered him. This news meant a delay in the plan, so he immediately remembered the backup strategy, the second method. Some of the cult members dared to warn that it was too risky and would provoke a reaction from the world rankers. Such words only increased the anger of the Cardinal, who ordered to immediately begin preparations for active action. He ordered a group of shadows to be assembled, who were to track down Arian, capture him alive, and deliver him as a hostage. At this time, Arian himself headed towards the B-rank gate, from where his team of disciples was already emerging. He greeted Eric, took out his sword and handed it to him, but the boy began to hesitate and refuse. Despite his hesitation, Eric had to accept the gift, and in return he gave a special artifact. It was a stone filled with dark energy that greatly interested and comforted Arian himself. Eric said that he felt something strange at the gate even before the Minotaur appeared, and after his death, a dark stone fell out of it. This interested Arian, especially the feeling itself, because a similar experience had never occurred near Echidna before. He suggested that the reaction was caused by dark energy, but its nature had to be special, related to the fault. After analyzing the situation, the hero came to the conclusion that Eric is able to sense entities that are connected to the cracks in the world. The boy also reacts to monsters damaged by the same energy, so Arian decided to take him on his next expedition. After a brief hesitation, he assured Hannah that the three of them could safely handle the hunt without Eric. The girl insisted that they all go together, but Arian explained that the goal was beyond the A-rank gate. There, he won't be able to fight and defend the team at the same time, so a large group will only create an additional threat. It was at this moment, as they approached the car, that they noticed movement and recognized members of a devilish cult. Without hesitation, Arian spread his wings, flew into the air and called for Hannah to flee, taking her with him. However, she did not listen, strengthened the hero's stats, and prepared to support him in battle until the very end. Arian entered the fray, first dodging the chains, then knocking down his opponents with a shockwave, Seizing the moment, he initiated a freeze and pulled the mask off one of the cultists, activating a demonic ability. The attempt to read fear failed. The enemy only laughed, stuck out his tongue, and showed strange symbolism. The next moment, an explosion sounded. Self-destruction. But Hannah managed to put up a shield, saving Arian from death. Then he realized that the enemy was acting secretly, trying to remain in the shadows and wanted to attack suddenly without direct traces. At this time, the Cardinal heard about the failure and guessed that Esme could have participated in that battle instead of the hero. After a short pause, he was informed that 30% of the Dark Rift fragments had already been collected. He ordered the messenger to be released, removed the mask, and revealed his true face. It was Elliot himself, in control of everything. Hannah ran to Arian, overcome with excitement, and he called Eric to arrange a more intensive hunt. After that, he returned to his friend, warning her of the growing danger from the cult and the difficulties ahead. Hannah thanked him for saving her and promised to become stronger, and thank him for everything he had done for her. 10 days passed, and Arian and Eric completed the hunt, having obtained several more demon crystals. The hero offered to give the boy a ride home, but he politely declined, so Arian went into town alone. On the way, he stopped at a store to buy ice cream for Echidna and then headed home to rest. Sitting on the couch, the hero wondered why there had been no news or signals from the Devil's cult for a long time. At that moment, the bell rang. Clark reported cult activity near the S-rank gate in the mountains. The Red Rose had already left for there, and Clark offered to give Arian a helicopter ride. However, he had a different plan. Together with Echidna, they went to a deserted area within the city limits. There, the dragoness transformed into her true form and soared into the sky with the hero on her back. Arian activated the invisibility projection so no one could notice their flight through the city outskirts. They landed on a deserted plateau near the gate, surrounded by mountains and an old forest. As Echidna began to transform back, she accidentally touched someone invisible nearby. Arian instantly prepared for battle, without hesitating for even a moment, but his opponent emerged from cover. A dark crystal peeked out of the man's pocket, and it became clear that before them was Gilbert of Onuri himself. He tried to explain something, saying that he was following a shadow and came across this place by chance during the chase. But Arian didn't let him finish. He cut each sentence short, trying to maintain control of the situation. The hero decided not to ignore the situation and allowed Gilbert to speak before making a final conclusion. However, the man decided to resort to force, trying to prove his point with blows and provocation. Arian effortlessly pushed him away with a single blow, not wanting to waste his strength on an unnecessary fight. Gilbert rushed forward again, suspecting the hero of deception or secret conspiracies with enemies. However, Arian only calmly reached out his hand, stopping him, and then pulled out all the crystals and money from his pockets. After that, he offered me coffee, sat down opposite him, and expressed a desire to hear his opponent's true goal. Gilbert explained that the world considers bandits redundant, limiting their role to support in battles. That's why they decided to independently uncover the truth about the cult in order to change attitudes towards the class. The hero didn't see the lie in the words, so he simply got up and moved on, without evaluating what he had heard. As he was leaving, Gilbert stopped him with a question, wanting to know the hero's true purpose. In response, he mentioned his favorite dish, hinting that he acts not for the sake of grand ideas, but out of interest. They said goodbye without enmity, and Arian, left alone, remembered the true puppeteer. Behind all this was Elliot, the head of the Nanul Guild, who was in contact with the priest in the temple at that time. The preparations for the ritual were complete. All that remained was to wait for the right moment to act. The priest checked the details, but noticed that the amount of blood for the ceremony was insufficient. Without hesitation, he summoned one of the cult members and killed him right in front of the others. This turned out to be not enough, so later all the cult members present died at the hands of the same minister. And then he began the ritual, loudly reciting a spell that sounded like the distorted whispers of ancient powers. At that time, Arian met with Esme and Clark, and it became clear that the situation with the cult was only getting worse. Ronnie soon joined them, reporting to Clark on the new research the team had gathered. As he spoke, Echidna whispered to Arian that the air around them was saturated with the smell of spilled blood. It was at that moment that the ritual ended, and a powerful being from the infernal dimension emerged from the rift, Oriax. It was a demon from the 7,000th circle, whose appearance darkened everything around with clots of dark energy. The priest bowed before him, acknowledging the creature's power and begging him to punish people by granting power to the chosen ones. One of Ronnie's agents, who was watching everything from afar, noticed the appearance of the demon and reported it to headquarters. But after only a few words, he disappeared from the connection, as if he had been snatched from this world. Without delay, Ronnie and the whole group set off to the ritual site to check out what had happened. Members of his team were already inside, so he immediately joined them, surveying the area. The demon, as soon as he saw those present, approached in an instant and mercilessly destroyed one of the warriors. This angered the leader, and he rushed to attack, but Oriax easily threw him back with one movement. His team managed to intervene and save their leader's life by pulling him to a safe distance. Everyone prepared for battle, the tension rising, and the demon calmly considered their strength and potential. Oriax's gaze suddenly stopped at Arian, in whose aura he recognized something familiar and incomprehensibly powerful. Among the depths of hell there is a 9th circle, the most terrible of all, where the lords of horror and destruction dwell. It is there that the castle of the demon lord is located, and Arian, the true master of darkness, rules over it all. Oriax froze in amazement, not understanding who was standing before him, and asked to return to hell, turning to the priest. But the ritual was already over, so the way back was lost, and the demon remained chained to this world. Ronnie's team noticed his confusion and were already planning to attack, taking the opportunity for a surprise attack. But Arian stopped them, suggesting that the demon might have confused him with someone else, and they should act more carefully. He stepped forward and telepathically contacted Oriax, ordering him to respond only through this form of communication. Arian declared that if the demon followed his orders, he would become part of his family, gaining their trust. In addition, Oriax was waiting for the respect of others and a share of the power of the ruler himself, which aroused his interest. After that, the demon bowed, recognizing Arian's authority and agreeing to carry out the order without any hesitation. The hero ordered him to drop his weapon and engage in a duel with the team to test his fighting qualities. Oriax obeyed and began a battle with everyone, instilling fear in them, but they gathered their strength and fought to the end. The team barely held out against him when Arian suddenly intervened and lifted the demon's weapon aloft. With one powerful blow, he ended the fight, wounding Oriax and securing victory for himself at the last moment. After that, the hero received a huge amount of experience points, indicating the level of the defeated enemy. After the victory, the hero decided to absorb the demon, emphasizing that they disappear after death. An enraged Ronnie grabbed the priest who had led the victims, intending to interrogate him immediately and harshly. But Arian felt a sudden surge of dark energy and ordered everyone to stand back from the dangerous captive. The priest began his transformation, ascended into the sky, and all attempts to restrain him proved completely futile. After the enemy disappeared, the hero opened his status, where he saw that he was advancing to the rank of demonic god. At the same time, the cardinal was congratulated on his successful enlistment, promising him the support of the influential order. It soon became known that world-ranked Barton intended to contact the authorities directly. This extremely angered the cardinal, and he immediately ordered the activation of the so-called second method. He didn't care that the cult might be hated in the world. The main thing was to complete the ritual as quickly as possible. The first target was ISU Station, and within a few days a powerful fault appeared there, shocking people. Arian had no information about the events, so he simply continued hunting with his apprentice Eric. While returning home, the hero received a call from Esme, and Eric received a message about a dangerous fault nearby. They immediately headed to the station, where Eric was rescuing a woman and child and protecting other residents from monsters. The hero previously explained that people infected with demons are already lost, so they should be destroyed without hesitation. So Eric accepted a personal quest where he had to defeat 2,000 monsters within the rift. Using the Cloud Dragon technique, he destroyed 100 opponents with one powerful move. Having reached the inner key, he was able to fully unleash the power of the sword, but this was still not enough. Unexpectedly, Jim, Hannah, Eve, Clark, and a worried Esme, who was looking for Arian, arrived to help. At that time, the hero was already diving deep into the rift, where he saw Elliot standing over the bodies of civilians. The Cardinal suggested killing the monster first, but Arian immediately attacked him. Having said goodbye to Eric earlier, Arian crouched on top of the pillar, where he concentrated and activated the Overseer's ability. While looking around, he noticed a masked Gilbert, who was quietly destroying monsters on his way forward. Gilbert's movements were purposeful, and he moved exactly where the tracker installed on Elliot led. Soon, Gilbert witnessed a terrifying spectacle. Elliot was extracting life energy from living people. The Cardinal immediately noticed and grabbed him, and then, hearing the mention of Barton, became even more angry. After Gilbert said that Barton was stronger, Elliot mercilessly killed his former comrade. At that moment, Arian appeared, and a fierce battle immediately broke out between him and the Cardinal. The explosions and shock waves were so powerful that they were seen and heard far beyond the battlefield. Although Elliot used unfair tactics by throwing cars at the hero, he could not gain an advantage. Arian didn't just withstand the blows, but on the contrary, he dominated the fight, forcing the enemy to retreat. The Cardinal, sensing a growing threat, began to wonder who this mysterious fighter really was. Arian did not respond to the threats, but simply continued the fight, increasing the pressure and force of each blow. The Cardinal quickly realized that there was a chasm between them, so he resorted to a desperate summoning of the demon into his own body. His body instantly changed. Massive wings, sharp claws, and a long spine-like tail appeared. Now he was not just a man, but a real monster, a lump of curse and demonic hatred. The battle escalated, and Arian used one of his most powerful techniques to break through the enemy's defenses. Without stopping, he unleashed another powerful attack, hoping to end the battle with one blow. In the midst of the battle, his dark energy suddenly spun out of control, as if someone had blocked it. Then it became clear that this was all part of Elliot's cunning plan, created in advance. Using a special blocking ability, the Cardinal gradually depleted Arian's strength. The demon grabbed Arian and threw him against the wall, leaving a mark of dark, destructive energy on his body. He approached him again with the intention of destroying him, but suddenly Echidna appeared, seeking to protect him. That seal on its master's body completely blocked its power, preventing it from intervening in the battle. The demon instantly grabbed her, intending to kill her first while she was weak and defenseless. However, Arian did not allow this to happen. He cut off his own hand, releasing the remnants of the dark power. This power turned out to be insufficient, so the hero once again plunged into the depths of his own consciousness. There, he opened a forbidden door, allowing even more dark energy to escape. Even when the enemy hit him in the head, his body instantly recovered, defying all the laws of physics. A powerful stream of energy shot out and grabbed the demon, preventing it from escaping. Elliot began to beg the demon to save him, and the devil immediately descended into the depths of his subconscious. There, he wanted to assess the situation, but upon noticing Arian, he froze and screamed in horror at what he saw. He tried to explain that a hero is a being who defeated the 7 supreme demons and became the ruler. Elliot refused to believe it, but his body began to be completely consumed by a dark, uncontrolled force. Meanwhile, Arian came to his senses, finding himself in the water, not remembering himself or the meaning of his existence. Looking down, he saw Elliot's body slowly being dragged into the depths of an unknown dark abyss. The hero did not understand why he should continue the fight and almost gave up, allowing himself to drown. But suddenly he heard a female voice softly calling his name and calling him to turn back. This voice awakened determination in him. He rushed towards the door that shone high above him. Opening them, he saw the faces of friends and acquaintances, who sighed with relief at seeing him. Realizing that opening the door was activating Manhwa's power, he understood the risk of such an act. After all, one careless movement can completely engulf him in chaos, destroying both mind and body. But the hero was still alive, because his goal was to protect Hannah, Echidna, and everyone he loved. Hannah quickly treated him, and then, without hesitation, picked Arian up to carry him home. The hero refused, but noticing the girl's rounded forms, he reluctantly agreed to the offer. But at that moment Jim interrupted him, offering to take Arian on himself and carry him instead of Hannah. This caused a new wave of protest in the hero. The smell of the man's sweat was worse for him than defeat. After the incident at the station, the world learned about the cult, and a wave of hatred for them swept through society. So now there was no point in hiding for the cultists. Their secret had become everyone's property. For the next 3 days, Aryan slept peacefully, regaining his strength after the intense and exhausting battle. When he woke up, he felt care from Echidna and Hannah, who had been by his side almost the entire time. But he unexpectedly discovered the presence of Esme, who seemed to be also very worried about his condition. To change the subject, she broke the news. The Nanul Guild had been officially disbanded due to the events. All the remnants of the cult were captured, but no one could be interrogated. Everyone turned into demons. The hero took the phone and began to flip through the news, where on the front page was Eric, hope and protector. So, wanting to strengthen himself, Aryan decided to meet him in the main hall of the Red Rose Guild. He asked the student to teach him a true martial art that changes the very essence of a fighter. Eric demonstrated the basics, ordering them to repeat the movements, but Aryan couldn't seem to get anything right. This angered the hero, and he was about to leave, but the disciple suggested concentrating through meditation. Aryan accepted the advice, and immediately after that, a demonic crystal materialized before him. Thus he fulfilled the third condition for becoming a demonic god without realizing it. The crystal had a different structure, so the hero decided to immediately test its strength in real combat. Aryan struck, amazed at the power. It surpassed anything he had ever done before. He realized that meditation is not necessarily sitting in silence, but a state of inner concentration. But suddenly Eric shouted, warning that doing so was dangerous due to the risk of energy distortion. He explained that distorted ki can seriously damage both the mind and body of the user. The hero decided not to take any risks and suggested finishing the training by postponing it to another day. Next time, Aryan wanted to go with Eric to the gate of the highest level, S rank. On his way back, he promised to help Eric later with choosing a car for ease of transportation. But on the way, they saw guards from the Chinese guild Chongko, who blocked their path. They said that the swordmaster wanted to see Eric, but the form of address was rather rude. This attitude alarmed Aryan, so he decided to step forward and intervene in the conversation himself. Tensions between the parties increased, and could have escalated to an open conflict or fight. At this moment, Eric came to the mentor's defense, showing loyalty and a desire to help. The fight could have become serious, but Aryan, after striking a few blows, changed the subject, inviting them to dinner. He took the group to a restaurant that served his favorite dish to lighten the mood a bit. But the guard had the imprudence to disparage the dish, calling it a hodgepodge, which angered the hero to the core. He made the offender pay for his rudeness. The guard returned to the guild covered in bruises and scratches. Upon receiving the report, the guild leader became furious, kicked out the guard, and decided to head to Korea himself. Meanwhile, a week passed, and every day Aryan refined the demonic stone within him. His body was becoming stronger, and his inner energy was gradually gaining new strength and stability. Together with his students, he went hunting to test team interaction in battle. They acted in unison and quickly destroyed the first monster, demonstrating remarkable coordination. But 3 more creatures emerged from the forest, and Aryan prepared to destroy the largest of them single-handedly. However, he was unexpectedly outmatched by an unknown swordsman, who instantly cut the monster in half. It turned out to be Fabian, the head of the Chongko Guild, who had arrived in person, as he had promised. He sincerely apologized for the misunderstanding, acknowledging his subordinates' mistakes and the humiliating treatment. Aryan remained cautious. He was not used to trusting words, no matter how sincere they seemed. But when the swordmaster himself bowed in apology, even his students could not hide their surprise. The hero inquired about the purpose of Fabian's arrival and asked why he had a meeting with Eric. Fabian explained that he saw a video of Eric's fight and became interested in the source of the God of War's technique. Everyone was surprised when Echidna asked who the God of War was, understanding the language of the Chinese guests. Aryan noticed this too, and asked how exactly she was able to understand the conversation without an interpreter. Echidna replied that thanks to magic she had mastered Chinese and then passed it on to others. After that, the conversation continued, but no one understood where the guest had learned about the technique. Then Fabian revealed a secret. Their lineage descended from the god of war, Han, from ancient times. He said that their martial arts had been passed down from generation to generation, even before the awakening. And although techniques have changed over the years, some techniques have survived in their purest form. He was particularly impressed by the cloud dragon technique, which Eric managed to recreate very accurately. Therefore, Fabian offered cooperation. He would restore the equipment, and in return he would train Eric. Eric, dreaming of becoming stronger, willingly agreed, seeing it as a great chance for growth. On the way home, Fabian asked his daughter if she would mind living in Korea for a while. She replied that she was quite happy with that because she was interested in a local man. This surprised her father because he knew she would only agree to someone stronger than him. At first he thought of Eric, but Jessica immediately objected, mentioning Arian's name. This thwarted the guild leader's plans, so in the morning he challenged the hero to a duel for his daughter's sake. Arian accepted the challenge without hesitation, but neither of them took each other seriously. The hero intended to test the new power of the crystal, so he wanted to fight to the fullest, without holding back. But underestimating the opponent turned out to be a mistake. The fight turned out to be tense and extremely even. Fabian was impressive in his power, and it became clear that he was deservedly considered a world-class ranker. He transformed into the first form of the Cyan Dragon to test his strength in a real fight. When the hero suddenly counterattacked, his blow had devastating energy, but it wasn't enough to win. Fabian remained on his feet, and now both opponents decided to fight at full strength. But at that very moment, the phone rang. Arian was calling from an angry Esme with a reminder. He promised to give her a ride to Huaran headquarters, but he had already forgotten his words. Arian tried to dodge, but heard the threat that she would take his car, and gave up. Putting aside his business and the battle, the hero set off with Esme to the indicated place, postponing the duel for later. Fabian made this decision calmly, as he still planned to continue the fight later. Jessica and Eric were amazed by Arian's strength, and did not hide their sincere admiration. Fabian tried to intimidate his opponent, but dark energy emanated from Arian as if from the ocean. It was a terrifying, all-consuming force that made even experienced fighters tremble. Meanwhile, an important conversation began at Huaran headquarters about the cult's next steps. According to the report, they are going to summon a succubus, a demon that sucks out male power. Her name is Lilith, and she is already familiar to the hero because she bothered him even when he was in hell. Just a few minutes ago, upon arriving at the scene, Arian was introduced to the commander of the First Corps. It was Jason, an influential Huaran fighter who apologized for his inaction at ISU Station. Now the cult is preparing an even larger ritual in Japan than the one associated with Orax. Despite the presence of a strong ranker, Charles, his strength to counter the challenge is catastrophically lacking. The dark energy in Arian was not growing, so he realized that destroying the demon would be beneficial to him. Upon hearing the name of the creature they were planning to summon, he vowed to stop it for the sake of world peace. In fact, Lilith had once been very close to him, even closer than most of the test subjects. While Palak personified power, Lilith led the Legion and was his legal wife. When the hero lost the battle to the Supreme Demon, it was she who helped him survive and escape. After that, he promised to marry her, and soon the wedding actually took place between them. However, every night she came to him, and he had to flee from her tentacles in panic. Now Arian has decided to protect the world, and to do this, he must first clarify the situation in Japan. It became known that cultists had kidnapped Yuna, the spiritual leader of the country, the grandson of the emperor himself. 5 years ago, an SS rank gate opened at a Japanese station, releasing thousands of monsters. Innocent people died until the celestial priestess Yuna appeared to stop the invasion. Thanks to her skill in spiritualism, she was able to instill the spirits of mythical gods within herself for protection. Thanks to this, they were able to save part of the country by holding off the attack of a supernatural army. Then Arian thought about the deadly sins intertwined with the myths of other worlds. The names of the 7 demons are like distorted stories of the deadly sins, but from another dimension. So perhaps Yuna possesses not just spiritualism, but the power to summon from another reality. That's why the cult needs Lilith, with her ability to control minds and create illusions. Due to the secrecy of the operation, only 7 people were allowed to be involved, and 5 were already on site. Without delay, the hero organized a flight to Echidna, taking Ronnie and Hannah with him. Ronnie was getting motion sickness on the way, and Hannah was wondering if she really should be involved in this. But Arian assured that her passive buff to allies gives her an extraordinary advantage in battle. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud scream. They arrived at a city where they could not cope with the monsters. There was no accurate information, so the team immediately headed to the Japanese military base without delay. The Prime Minister warmly welcomed Jason, thanking him for his support in such a difficult situation. In response, the Hwaranu fighter briefly introduced the entire team, emphasizing their experience in Korea. There, they had to deal with a dangerous, devilish cult that left a mark on their memory. Echidna's magic has spread to all players, allowing them to understand foreign languages fluently. Charles emerged confidently from the crowd, his Susan eyes shining in the semi-darkness of the base against the silence. When the friendly greeting began, Arian abruptly interrupted it, urging them to move on to discussing the plan. In response, Charles produced a detailed map of the area, showing possible enemy hiding spots. A little time passed, and already at the station the team entered into the first open battle with ugly monsters. Esme insisted that Arian join the fight as well, and he struck, enhanced by Hannah's magic. His attack was so strong that the enemy could not withstand it and was blown to pieces with one blow. Esme made a remark to him, reminding him that he needed to stick to the previous battle plan. Arian remembered how Charles had explained earlier that they planned to divide into several attack groups. This tactic was supposed to confuse the enemy, causing them to lose their orientation in space. In the midst of the battle, Charles had to sneak into the ritual site, trying to establish himself as the main hero. Suspecting something was wrong, Arian activated a spotter to monitor his allies' actions from a distance. When no enemy was visible nearby, he suspected that cultists might be underground. Without hesitation, he delivered a powerful blow directly below him, piercing layer after layer of the stone surface. And it was there, in the dark depths beneath the station, that the true servants of the cult appeared, ready for the ritual. The hero swiftly charged forward and destroyed 2 enemies, clearing his way to the central hall of the cult. Hannah and Esme wanted to follow, but Arian firmly explained that he would continue on his own without any support. Echidna reminded him that he should not open the door under any circumstances, even in case of danger. After a brief farewell, Arian moved on independently, leaving his allies in a safe place. He destroyed several guards who came across him and approached the entrance to the main hall of the cult. Inside, he was met by strange cultists, whose eyes glowed with a fanatical thirst to summon the succubus. They whispered excitedly about Lilith, as if it were the fulfillment of a cherished dream, which had enraged the hero. Unable to bear it, Arian rushed at Cardinal Chichiyama, and with a strong blow threw him far back. The enraged hero did not stop. He began to methodically destroy one cultist after another without pity. The cardinal tried to escape, but the same fate befell him. Arian's power was unstoppable. When the last enemy fell and silence reigned around, the hero activated skills to close the rift. However, at that very moment, the familiar dark tentacles of a succubus suddenly appeared from an opening in reality. It was Lilith, who instantly recognized her master and beloved husband from a past life. Now, full of the desire to return to him, she tried with all her might to break into this world. The hero refused to use Manhwa because he realized that the rift was formed by a clot of dark energy. Instead of fighting, he decided to absorb her and redirect her to the crystal, taming her power within. Dark energy began to change his nature, temporarily giving him the form of a demonic god from within. His appearance remained almost unchanged, but his strength was much greater than ever before. Arian focused and used all the absorbed power to finally close the rift between the worlds. Successful completion of the ritual increased his level and granted him the new ability to create mythical equipment. Remembering the heavenly priestess, the hero decided to pull her out because she could become a useful ally for him. But suddenly an explosion shook the station. Charles appeared before him, furious at the violation of the agreements. Arian wanted to turn back, but he thought about the reward for saving Yuna. As if reading these thoughts, Charles shouted, declaring the Korean players traitors to humanity. A few hours later, security forces arrived, and Arian was thrown into chains without trial or investigation. The next morning, a hearing was to be held. He was accused of being a cult spy. The news of the arrest stunned the team. Hannah, Esme, and the others were in complete despair. They almost rushed to rescue him, but Arian stopped them, promising to return on his own. Once in the cell, he activated the doll skill, leaving an exact copy of his body in his place. He himself, having lost his material form, quietly slipped out the window to return to his true self. At the trial, Charles was confident of his victory, as he had previously bribed the judge and all the witnesses. His lawyer made serious allegations, portraying Arian as a dangerous ally of the cult. This outraged Esme, who could not contain her emotions and desperately disagreed with those lying words. Arian, having no defense, responded calmly, stating only that he had nothing to do with the cult. Charles began to rejoice, confident of his victory, until an unexpected witness appeared, the Prime Minister. There was silence in the hall until he fearfully told how Charles had blackmailed him a few days ago. He admitted that the hero is actually a victim, and the one who was respected as the savior is the one to blame for everything. Eyewitnesses did not hide their shock, and the minister described how his own family was under threat. He claimed that it was Arian who saved Yuna, and he had evidence for this, including a crystal from Charles's house. Members of the Cheonko Guild entered the hall, led by Jessica, who was investigating the cult. She brought a suitcase of evidence, enchanted crystals, artifacts, and swords with cultist seals. Jessica confidently stated that Charles was one of the high-ranking members of the Devil's organization. One of her companions removed her hood. Yuna, the celestial priestess who had recently disappeared, appeared before everyone. First, she apologized to the people for all the troubles that had befallen the country due to her disappearance. And then she explained that although she didn't remember everything, she was sure that it was Arian who saved her from captivity. The judge ordered Charles's immediate arrest, but he took advantage of the chaos and tried to escape. Realizing that this was all part of the hero's plan, he escaped the building, avoiding arrest. Arian immediately rushed after him and knocked him out of the air, wanting to finally tell the whole truth. From the first words, Arian remembered that the magical shackles had had no effect on him even before. His second argument was that the creation of demonic crystals was not only available to cultists. The third mistake was relying on ordinary people, who could be terrified and their will broken. The fourth oversight was the assumption that Arian had no allies in Japan because Charles did not know about Fabian. And the fifth thing was that the enemy didn't even know who the hero really was, and now he had to pay for it. Hearing these words, Charles lost control and immediately attacked, hoping to decide everything with a blow. But Arian was ready for the attack, accepted it and responded, which started a real fight between the two fighters. When Charles was on the verge of defeat, he activated the eye and summoned the god of lightning, Susanoo himself. This was his last chance, as he could only use the power of the deity for one short minute. Arian didn't understand anything from the enemy's shouts, but he knew for sure that he couldn't waste his energy on translation now unnecessarily. However, quickly orienting himself, he activated 4 abilities and combined them into a single powerful blow. Directing all his power at the enemy, the hero named this combination Gungnir, the Spear of Fate from Legends. Arian's spear merged with the power of the god, creating a wave of light, noise, and energy that shook the surrounding space. However, this power also struck him. The wounds multiplied, and thick, black, demon-like blood flowed from them. Feeling a strange power in his own body, he realized that the energy from the rift had mixed with his blood. Taking advantage of this, Arian directed the explosion within himself at the enemy, turning blood into a weapon against the god. Eventually, after defeating Susanoo, he approached the wounded Charles, who was only saved by his magic eye. For his insolent insults and provocations, Arian burned his opponent's hand, preparing to wrest his strength from him. Charles begged for mercy, promising mythical equipment, strength, power, but none of it mattered. The hero emotionlessly took his eye and thought about the god who had appeared incompletely, but could still return. If Susanoo is reborn in his true form, defeating him will become much more difficult, almost impossible. It was at this moment that a new system window appeared, a message about the second step of becoming a god. The terms were hidden, but it was clear that Arian's power had begun to shift into a new transcendent form. Deciding that enough was enough for today, he called Fabian and Jessica, asking them to clean up the traces of the fight. Fabian was shocked by what he saw, but he admitted that such strength was only gained through pain and experience. Realizing Arian's greatness, he blessed the future union with his daughter, even though the girl had other plans. Jessica wanted to return to China to develop her skills and become stronger without imposing herself on others. She felt like she wouldn't fit in with Arian's group of friends yet, and she wanted to prepare for it. Meanwhile, the hero himself returned to his family, and from the threshold he heard Esme expressing her indignation. Even despite Hannah's calmness, her friend couldn't hold back, because she was too worried about Arian. Seeing familiar faces, the hero did not argue and immediately hugged Hannah, apologizing. He suggested that they return home, avoiding arguments and unwanted explanations in the middle of the street. But at the same time, his thoughts were unsettling. Why had Yuna suddenly taken his side, as if she had remembered everything? After all, if she had come to her senses, he would have definitely felt it. It means something else was happening inside. And indeed, from a distant place, Yuna, who was no longer completely herself, silently watched them. Lilith awoke in her soul, and in her thoughts she called Arian the Lord of Demons, waiting for a new meeting. A week later, they finally returned home, tired of the events that had weighed on each of them. Esme was especially exhausted because she had to endure a barrage of criticism after the death of Japan's hero. Despite Charles's connection to the cult, the people proclaimed him a martyr and blamed everything on Korea. Arian was at the center of the scandal, and all this time Esme stood up for him, ignoring the pressure. When they returned, Arian escorted Esme to the house and asked Hannah and Echidna to return on their own. He intended to visit one place that did not require combat, but only concentration and inner silence. Echidna wanted to join, and Arian didn't object. Her strength could come in handy, even in a peaceful place. They headed to the S-rank gate, where Arian was going to create a mythic-level weapon without distraction. While studying skills, he discovered an interesting pattern in the energy expenditure when they were used simultaneously. Instead of simply adding, it grew exponentially. 4 skills required 16 times as much. So Arian asked Echidna to keep an eye on security while he fully immersed himself in the forging process. The dragon instantly activated the protective barrier without asking any questions and completely trusting him. Having begun work, the hero, using his 3 skills, created furnaces and heated the forge core. Thus was born a weapon of a unique level, a spear named Gaybolg, imbued with his essence and will. He tested it by breaking through a rock with one blow and realized that this thing was no less legendary. Echidna asked with interest about his true goal, but the hero himself did not have a clear vision of the future. It seemed to him that choosing one style would limit flexibility and take away the opportunity to combine forces. Then Echidna proposed creating a changeable weapon that could adapt to the situation and tactics. Arian liked the idea, so that evening he invited Hannah to use her power to help stabilize the process. Using Susanoo's eye, he activated 4 abilities at once and began the decisive forge. There were only 10 seconds left to hold out, during which he concentrated on giving energy to the creature. But even then, I doubted whether this would really be enough to go beyond the usual level of skill. Mythical objects are incredibly powerful, but their capabilities are still limited by the laws of the world and matter. He yearned for more, a rupture, a transformation, a transition between spaces and forces capable of miracles. And at the last second, the hero dared to add a 5th ability, absorption, as the final touch. The system responded instantly. A flash of light appeared in front of him, and a message about a new level appeared. Thus, a transcendental level artifact was created, a sphere called the Key of the Devil's Sea. After the ball was created, the dark energy around it noticeably thickened, and the ability to create became unavailable. Touching the artifact, Arian discovered that the weapon was capable of development if a strong connection was established with it. He tried changing the shape of the bullet into a bivalve. The first transformation happened easily and without any extra effort. Then the hero transformed the artifact into the flaming sword Graham, and the speed of the change amazed even the experienced Echidna. Finally, Arian wanted to turn the weapon into Gungnir, but the system responded that the level was too low. At that moment, the girls ran up to him, wondering if he had finished working on the Transcendental Class artifact. The hero, having transformed the weapon into a convenient ring, laconically replied that he had completed everything that was needed. He struggled with the level restrictions every day for the next week, but all attempts proved futile. He thought that he should look for another way to grow, and remembered the activity of the cult in Russia. I decided to try to summon a demon through them to kill and get something new, but I didn't have the coordinates. Due to the size of the state, it was difficult to find a branch, so I decided to first have a good meal and get some rest. But when he opened the pot, it seemed to him that Lilith's tentacles were peeking out from there, and he couldn't help but scream. Later, Arian asked Echidna about the boxes, and learned that Hannah had now gone hunting in the nearest forest. As for the boxes, Esme brought them, and it turned out that Yuna sent him money and entire cases of tentacles. It was a sign of gratitude and apology, as well as a promise to help in the future whenever needed. When Esme recounted Yuna's words, Hannah almost burst into tears with jealousy, emotions overflowing her heart. Arian sensed something strange about this, but was suddenly distracted by the news of the arrival of an important guest. It turned out that Alex, the Sword of Justice, a world ranker and legend of the British guilds, had arrived in Korea. His visit was arranged to meet with Eric, which made the hero feel uneasy and distrustful. I decided to look up information on the internet. Alex was the first Briton to always protect the weak. 2 months ago, after the ISU station incident, he publicly declared his fight against the cult on his own. Last month he attacked the European branch of the cultists, and surprisingly, not a single creature died. The hero wasn't sure if Alex could be trusted and was worried that he would become closer to Eric. So he took Echidna with him and went to the students who were waiting for him in a familiar, cozy cafe. From Eric's appearance and intonation, it became clear that he literally admired Alex as an ideal. In order not to escalate the topic, Arian brought the conversation to a level and learned that Eric had managed to reach 60th. What was most impressive was that he was not subject to any restrictions and developed completely freely. Soon, Alex himself appeared at the door. Arian had invited him to see everything for himself. His posture was calm, and every step echoed with powerful, almost divine magical energy. And as soon as Alex crossed the threshold, Arian realized he was much stronger than Charles was at his peak. He introduced himself to everyone present and sincerely expressed his desire to get to know everyone on the team better. But Arian did not hide his hostility. He was filled with jealousy towards Eric, and at the same time towards Hannah herself. Fury was burning inside him, so he asked the guest directly without reservation what exactly he was trying to achieve. A dialogue began between them, in which Alex talked about the defenders chosen by the system for a special mission. He and Eric both belonged to this group, and now he wanted the young man to join the Guardians of Humanity. The Guardians aimed to preserve the future of the world and sought those who could grow and protect without destruction. Alex remembered the video of Eric killing monsters, and even then he felt a deep pain and despair in his heart. He believed that by joining the Guards, the young man would become stronger and be able to protect all people without exception. The organization knew a method for gaining power without causing physical harm to anyone. And although Arian supported the idea of strengthening Eric, something inside told him that there was a hidden threat here. So he activated the familiar's connection and told the student to think things over on his own and not rush into a decision. Alex agreed to wait, but as he left the meeting, he was shocked to receive a clear refusal. Arian followed him, keeping his distance, when the guest suddenly stopped and shouted into the darkness. He felt someone's presence and asked who else was hiding nearby besides his known pursuer. It turned out that one of the cultists that Alex had pursued and defeated earlier was nearby. He attacked unexpectedly, but a moment later, he was completely immobilized by the sword of justice. The confused enemy begged for death, but Alex said that every life is worthy of forgiveness and a chance. He called for repentance and the opportunity to start over because murder is not the only way. But the cultist threw a light grenade and, taking advantage of the blinding, quickly ran away. A random passerby found himself in his path, whom he rudely pushed into the wall with incredible force. The girl fell, covered in blood with no signs of life, and it became clear that there was no chance of her being saved. Alex rushed to her, tried to help, but it was no use. His body was already powerless. At that moment, Arian emerged from the ambush and accused him of the death of an innocent victim through no fault of his own. The hero assured that it was his hands that now had blood because he had not stopped the enemy in time. But suddenly, the body in his arms began to slowly disappear, as if it had never existed. Alex calmly stated that no one actually died, and there are no victims in this situation. He supposedly plucked from the depths of his consciousness something he had been unwilling to acknowledge and accept for so long. The hero was stunned by the realization and asked only one thing: whether he still wanted to recruit Eric. Alex answered in the affirmative, because it is in Eric, according to him, that the hope of the entire human race is placed. After that, he left the meeting place, leaving Arian alone with heavy thoughts and doubts. He, in turn, began to deeply hate the Sword of Justice, and at the same time conceived a plan of revenge. That same evening, Alex sat in his room, rethinking his conversation with the hero and his contradictory words. In his thoughts, he assured himself that the day would come when Arian would also believe in the salvation of every soul. But suddenly, a woman's scream was heard from the roof of a neighboring house, which made him immediately jump up. When he reached the spot, he saw a figure posing as an ordinary cultist in the middle of the night. As it turned out, the enemy was only imitating a female voice to lure the hero into a planned trap. A dialogue began in which the stranger began to press on weak points, recalling a recent murder. Alex did not want to accept the fact of the girl's death, refused to admit his own guilt in the incident. It was a masterful provocation, after which an intense and fierce battle on the roof instantly began. During the fight, it became apparent that behind the cultist's mask was Arian himself in another form. Although Alex did not recognize him from the outside, he felt an incredible change in his opponent's strength and fighting style. His attacks became extremely powerful. The Sword of Justice barely had time to dodge the blows. Arian used flames, reinforced weapons, and cunning maneuvers, depriving the enemy of any initiative. Alex tried to understand how a simple cultist could become so powerful in just one day. Surprise overwhelmed him, and he couldn't help it. He asked directly if he was facing a real demon. Having understood the truth, Alex rushed into battle without hesitation, although he had not yet attempted to deal a fatal blow to the enemy. He sought only to stop the enemy, not by killing, but by taming the force and directing it in a different direction. But long before that, when the cultist had just fled the scene of the fight, Arian immediately set out in pursuit. The cultist, noticing the pursuit, decided that the hero belonged to the ranks of the guards, so he instantly rushed to attack. However, Arian effortlessly stopped him by applying an energy block and stripping him of his power. His goal was to gain as much information as possible, but his opponent refused to say anything useful. Then Arian changed his approach and began to use the power of subjugation, trying to break the will of the enemy. However, he stubbornly resisted, so the hero did not hold back and began to beat, supplementing the interrogation with flames. Blow after blow flew through his body until several teeth were knocked out with blood and pain. Only then did the cultist break down and agree to tell what he knew about the Guardian organization. He said that the guards consist of fewer than 10 chosen ones who call themselves defenders of humanity. They are led by Cassie, a woman with a unique ability to find those whom the system recognizes as new defenders. It was thanks to her skill that Alex was able to find Eric, noticing the potential in his inner strength. Unfortunately, that was all the prisoner knew, and now he begged to be spared his life, at least out of pity. Arian asked what benefit he would get if he left his opponent alive after this interrogation. He shared a few more facts, but most of them turned out to be well known and no longer new. Despite this, some trifles interested Arian, although they did not change his decision, and he killed the interrogator. On the roof, the fight continued, although for the hero it seemed more like a game than a real test. It seemed to him that global rankings were meaningless because after Fabian, no one had impressed him with his strength. Continuing the battle, he grabbed Alex by the neck, depriving him of the opportunity to resist or evade. He began to pour out cruel words, forcing his opponent to remember reality and real losses. Arian wanted to break his faith in the salvation of all by showing that death was not a theory, but an inevitability. In the midst of an emotional attack, Eric suddenly appeared, deciding to defend his idol and ally. He turned to the unknown enemy, wanting to know who was hiding under the mask and why he attacked. To avoid detection, Arian changed his voice and introduced himself with a name that was meant to inspire fear: Satan. The hero stoked anger in Eric's heart, provoking him with threats of reprisals over the sword of justice. Even earlier, Arian had called his student, ordering him to do anything to save Alex, not trusting himself. He repels the attack of cultists and understood that he would not be able to appear at the scene of the clash. Eric didn't hesitate for a second. He rushed into battle, rushing at the enemy who called himself Satan. But the first blow turned out to be a failure. He flew into the wall before he even had time to understand how. Failure didn't stop him. He tried again, but the result was the same, even more painful. The opponent taunted, throwing insulting words, trying to shake the boy's confidence. However, Eric, despite the pain and the disparity of strength, got up again and continued to attack with all his might. Arian, in the guise of a cultist, appreciated the zeal, noting that there was something genuine in the young man's attacks. The scratch on his cheek proved that this guy was stronger than Alex, because he wanted to kill. But this was part of the hero's plan, a test that was supposed to make the student truly strong. Arian deliberately gave him a chance to strike, then threw him back with a force that shattered the wall. At the same time, he explained that without true power, Eric would not be able to survive in the real world. He saw how the young man was holding back his emotions, and he sought to push out the pent-up anger and despair from him. Squeezing Alex's neck, Arian increased the pressure, forcing Eric to stare at his idol's doom. At the same time, he continued to emphasize the student's techniques and strength, encouraging anger and action. When Eric was a few steps away from striking, the worst thing happened. Alex died. The hero's blow lingered, and Eric, struck by the shock and the previous jolt, fell, unable to get up. His consciousness became foggy. He only heard the voice of Satan demanding to become stronger. He told him to return only when he was able to kill him with his own hands. After that, Eric fainted, and Arian finally dropped his mask, revealing his true face. His plan was coldly calculated. He wanted the student to grow through pain and loss. The only thing Eric lacked to break through was despair. It was with it that the hero filled the gap. But at that very moment, the system sent a notification about the defender's death and the lifting of restrictions. Arian's level has risen rapidly. He has now crossed another boundary in his own development. His eyes widened. It was an unexpected result, and he immediately understood the truth. From now on, to advance further, he will have to kill other level defenders. His gaze fell on Eric's powerless silhouette. Now he too had become a possible key to growth. But after reflection, the hero abandoned the plan to kill Eric, deciding to preserve the strength of the defenders for the battle. He wanted to keep Alex alive, but his influence on the student was too destructive for further development. So Arian decided to switch his focus to a new skill that had recently opened up in his combat system. The name of the ability was Soul Reaper, which allowed the player to completely absorb demonic souls to strengthen the class. Previously, he had only absorbed fragments of souls, but now he had access to the full absorption of essence. This skill is closely related to the power of devouring, which destroys the energy and life within a creature. Arian realized that this could affect other forces as well, including those that awaken the demon within him. Among the demon god's unknown conditions there were two, and both were related to the newly acquired ability. Something similar had happened before with the sixth skill, a demonic creation that merged with it. To clear things up, Arian decided to hunt demons, while also involving Esme in the case. First, he wanted to test the power of the Soul Reaper by using Manhwa's weakened seal. Now he could look deeper into his own consciousness and explore his demonic rebirth. Using Eric's technique, he concentrated dark energy, reaching a new stage of accounting. The process of absorbing dark energy from the lake was surprisingly fast, with almost no resistance. The hero felt in danger. If he didn't stop, Manhwa would take over his body and destroy his personality. However, the thirst for power prevailed over reason. He craved more and more, not stopping even for a moment. But one step away from the fatal end, he stopped abruptly and managed to increase his own energy by 8. But the total indicator stopped at 120, although it should have been 1 unit higher. Even after activating the cloak, the forces did not change, indicating that an invisible limit had been reached. This confused Arian. He couldn't understand why the system was hiding the real restriction. Until I realized that players like him simply didn't exist at the current level. None of the users reached the 120 mark, while he did so in just 6 months. A few days later, at the Red Rose Guild, Fabian was finishing up another training session with Eric. But the student wanted more. His stern gaze even made the mentor feel a slight fear. So they decided to go hunting for the SS rank gates to gain practical experience. Eric needed real battles, not exercises, so he even gave up communication. Arian thought it over and admitted that this challenge would be a real catalyst for growth for the student. He went up to Eric, hugged him, and barely holding back tears, blamed himself for Alex's death. But the disciple insisted that it was his fault because he didn't have enough strength to save the idol. In response, Arian promised to grow together to destroy evil and never lose anyone again. After that, they headed for the gate, and the hero himself remained to wait for news from Esme. Everything was going smoothly until Esme called and ordered the news to be turned on immediately. There were reports of a large-scale attack by demons and cultists who opened interdimensional portals. Hearing this, Arian smiled. His eyes lit up with excitement and anticipation of a great battle. The hero instantly arrived at the Red Rose Guild to personally learn about the current situation. Esme reported that cultists in one of the Russian cities summoned hundreds of demons and monsters. The number of civilian casualties was small, but the monsters still remained unpredictable. No one knew in which direction they would move, or how quickly they would be able to change their line of attack. China called for an alliance, so an international meeting of guilds was planned soon. Esme was going there, and Arian agreed to join her, along with Echidna and Hannah. Eric continued training while Arian left the others, considering the situation too dangerous. He was convinced that if necessary, he could independently cope with any obstacles. Upon arrival at the hall, they were met by Jessica, with whom Arian decided to establish normal contact. The girl said that she is currently training independently and simultaneously performing some of her parental duties. Since Fabian was absent, the meeting was conducted by her uncle Joseph, known as the Demon Blade. Although his name is not as famous as Fabian's, he nevertheless held the position of deputy chairman of Chongko. He was distrustful of Korea and did not seek close cooperation with Eastern guilds. As they approached the premises, Arian spotted Cheryl from Sonare and John from the Onuri Guild. Both said that the guard was not letting them inside, citing Joseph's own order. Jessica tried to defuse the situation by appealing to her father's authority, but to no avail. The guard was unwavering, clearly carrying out the instructions of higher management without any doubt. Then Arian stepped forward, calmly asking what would happen if they did force their way in. The guard instantly tried to attack, but the next moment he found himself under the debris of the wall. Another man rushed at the hero, but in a moment he was also neutralized and lying nearby. Arian called for the meeting to continue, but in response he heard only empty words and excuses. Then he decided to publicly voice the story of Joseph, a man who lived in his brother's shadow. His words hit the mark, hinting at envy of Fabian's fame and a desire to excel. Now that the real threat had emerged, Joseph feared that the triumph would go to the Korean guilds. He didn't want them to take away the victory, leaving him with only fragments of recognition and someone else's success. This was Joseph's chance to gain fame, but the fear of giving it to others outweighed common sense. His anger grew with each remark, but Arian did not stop, calling for a direct duel. Joseph jumped up and rushed to attack, but Arian immobilized him with a single push without getting up. After that, the hero handed over command of the Korean guilds to Esme, who looked unsure. She believed that she lacked leadership qualities and was very nervous about such a responsible task. Arian briefly explained that he would not be able to lead alone because he had other plans that he could not voice right now. In reality, he planned to use the situation to absorb demon souls and increase his power. Meanwhile, the first monsters appeared on the horizon, and the situation immediately took on a threatening appearance. Esme tried to outline a plan of action, but her words were lost. The participants in the battle did not understand her at all. In order not to waste time, she handed over command to Jason, who knew the team better. After that, she encouraged the allies, urging them to perceive the battle as a hunt for growth. These words inspired everyone and helped to rally them, so she boldly rushed first into the attack. Thanks to one of the monsters, Anton, the apostle of evil and leader of the cult, was able to observe the events. He coordinated his actions, monitoring the situation in real time through the monster's eyes. His plan was going perfectly, and at that moment, the demon of the 5,000th circle of hell, Utter, appeared nearby. Utter was unhappy with his role as an observer. He wanted to go out and kill a few people, but Anton insisted on waiting because he intended to meet Arian in person. He was curious to see the one who ruined their plans in Japan by not stopping the cult, but he also had no desire to save Yuna. Watching him through one of the cardinals, Anton saw something familiar in the hero. He realized that Arian was not seeking justice or goodness, only power, just like Anton himself. It was this similarity that prompted him to the risky idea of recruiting the hero into the ranks of the cult. But for this to succeed, it was necessary to restrain the demons, who were already losing patience with waiting. Utter took these words as a humiliation and swung angrily, trying to attack Anton. But his hand suddenly stopped. The next moment he was lying on the ground, gripped by shock. He began to threaten Anton, promising revenge, but the apostle did not hesitate and instantly killed him. After that, he turned to the rest of the demons, clearly ordering them to obey him without any objections. The team continued the fight, despite fatigue and the continuous appearance of new, increasingly aggressive monsters. Every step forward was accompanied by risk, and any mistake could cost someone their life. Clark constantly reminded Esme not to forget about the rear, where dangers often lurked. She destroyed the monster in time, which had almost reached the leader's back, ready to attack by surprise. Esme was annoyed that Arian had disappeared, leaving the battlefield at the most critical moment. Anger welled up in her heart. He was the one who should have been here, protecting the others nearby. However, she did not know that Arian was nearby, albeit disguised, secretly watching the team. It was important to him to make sure that the allies could cope in battle without him, and surprisingly, he was pleasantly surprised. All the guilds interacted surprisingly harmoniously and precisely. Some supported the allies, others went for a breakthrough, and some simply protected the weaker ones. Despite their different origins, they acted as a single mechanism, without losing focus. Arian was still expecting the cultists themselves to appear, as he considered them the main threat. When he felt a powerful flash of dark energy, he immediately ordered Echidna to protect Hannah. He didn't explain anything unnecessary, just emphasized that the girl's safety was an absolute priority. Suddenly, a demonic hand appeared from under the ground, invisible to others but visible to him. This hand brought a secret message. The cult's cardinal wanted a personal conversation with the hero. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Anton continued to persuade the demons not to act hastily. He believed that the meeting with Arian would definitely take place, but after one important stage. The message had already been sent, so all that was left was to wait a little and not ruin everything too soon. Anton not only restrained the demons, but also intimidated them, forcing them to submit to his will. His gaze stretched far ahead. He was looking for a way to lure Arian into a trap. Among the possible options was even the idea of kidnapping Hannah to challenge the hero to a duel. However, suddenly he felt something, an invisible but insanely powerful force approaching. Before he could look back, Arion was already standing before him, ready to talk without delay. First, the hero examined the surrounding demons, making sure that they were weak and not threatening. His face remained impassive, his gaze cold and attentive to every detail. Anton began his speech by speaking inspiringly about the great privileges that the cult of demons affords. Among them are immortality, insensitivity to hunger and thirst, and strength that surpasses that of humans. He claimed that the cult could turn people into demons, giving them unprecedented power. Anton believed that this was exactly what Arion desired: eternal life in a sublime superhuman form. It was not necessary to be limited to a mortal body if one could become a being free from human fate. He spoke with confidence, trying to touch the deepest desires of his interlocutor. But Arion only smiled, realizing how much Anton was mistaken in his judgments. He was amused by these efforts, how little the cult knew about the hero's true nature. But before they could answer, everyone felt the earth tremble and everything around them shook. Rifts erupted from the depths of the bowels, shattering the earth and devouring some of the demonic creatures. Stone spears cut through the surface as if searching for demons hiding among the shadows and dust. These changes were so strong that even the team felt the vibrations several kilometers away. Esme looked ahead anxiously, recognizing the spears, and her heart sank for Arion. Anton thought that he was dealing with an ordinary player, capable of changing the landscape like in some old legends. He considered these metaphors because there were no people who could turn plains into majestic mountains. However, he felt something unusual, so he tried to learn the characteristics of his opponent, even out of the corner of his eye. But it didn't seem to matter. He had a book of nightmares, weapons beyond the levels. He ordered the demons to attack, causing the hero to become distracted and lose focus on the battle. The demons, without hesitation, rushed forward, following the command and trying to break the hero's rhythm. But with Arion's first movements, it became clear that the usual techniques were completely powerless against him. He just snapped his fingers, and the demons burst into flames and sank into the cracks like dolls. Each gesture created new cracks in the ground, into which the monsters disappeared without even having time to scream. Some presented themselves as rulers of certain circles of hell, but were destroyed without any pity. Their loud names, speeches, and threats proved futile. Not even a shadow of them remained. Although there were many of them, the hero did not give up, instead preparing a new, even more powerful combination. He combined his 4 abilities, which together created a deadly force of perfect order. The sword plunged into the rock, releasing dark energy through her body, destroying everything that touched her. At that moment, Anton wondered if he was dealing with the same person about whom the legends were circulating. He remembered stories of one man's war with the supreme demons, which seemed like fiction. But with each action of the hero, there were fewer doubts. A demonic lord really stood before him. One who once consumed his servants for the sake of growing in power, knowing no regrets or hesitation in battle. Anton tried to complete a spell that might at least slightly even out their chances in the duel. But each time something got in the way. First he lost his arm, and secondly, he hurt his side. At first it seemed like it was just bad luck or coincidence, but Arion's gaze changed everything forever. There was no anger in those eyes, only confidence, calm, and something too menacing to describe. Anton was gripped by a fear he had never known before, a fear that penetrated to the very core of his being. It seemed to him that this was all a dream or a nightmare, because he couldn't believe that such things were possible in reality. But the hero was already descending from the cliff at that moment, slowly but with inexorable force. One blow was enough to make the opponent crumple, fall, lose balance. Anton still had hope. He took the book and completed the final spell, wishing for the hero's death. But when he said what he wanted, nothing happened. Arion didn't even flinch. He just stared in silence. The hero simply pointed out that you shouldn't throw around words that you don't have the strength to put into practice. Anton, completely frightened, began to beg for mercy, remembering all the known prayers. Arian saw before him a being in whom dark energy flowed freely without the resistance of conscience. He asked if he had ever saved anyone, and the answer was only silence, without the slightest remorse. And it was then that the hero realized the truth. They were indeed similar, but only in that they didn't save. It was a confession, and at the same time a sentence, and Arian, without hesitation, delivered the final blow. After which he absorbed the souls of 237 demons, activating the first condition of the Spirit of Darkness. This allowed him to increase his own soul level, although his dark energy level remained unchanged. Looking into his own subconscious, he didn't notice any changes, but Manhwa's seal had noticeably weakened. In order not to waste power, the hero decided to convert all the free dark energy into statistical gain. After that, he was about to return to the team, not knowing how to clear the rocks and lava around him. The battle with the cult ended in victory for the players, and the whole world started talking about the large-scale operation. Korea strengthened its reputation, because it was she who stopped the conspiracy that kept humanity in suspense. When the hero returned, he explained to Esme that he had fought the demons and completed his separate task. She reported that Joseph left the group immediately after the fight, without explanation or respect for the others. Jessica apologized for his behavior, after which Arian tasked Esme with monitoring the cult worldwide. The girl agreed and wanted to invite him to the computer club, but Echidna abruptly interrupted her. She reported on the mission accomplished, for which the hero praised her and shared the next plan. He said he wanted to go to the new SS rank gate, which had just opened. Esme thought it was related to the cult and wanted to accompany him, but he politely refused. The hero noted that he planned to summon a new familiar to expand his powers and influence. Echidna took this as a hint that he no longer needed her, so Arian took her with him. Once at the gate, the hero noticed a circle on the ground without any other magical objects. Even the analysis conducted revealed nothing that indicated the technological origin of the portal. When they entered, Echidna immediately rushed into battle with the local monster, wasting no time. Meanwhile, Arian began the summoning ritual, thinking about who exactly he would like to call upon for help. He hesitated between Ouroboros, Volcatus, or the mysterious Halcyon, whom he had never seen. Suddenly, the system warned that the weakened seal would cause the rift to be deeper than ever. This portal led to the same place, Erno, Echidna's homeworld, gloomy and ancient. Arian's new familiar slowly rose from the rift, the demonic king of that world named Balzac. Meanwhile, Esme dropped Hannah home, and they exchanged some more words before saying goodbye. The girls were worried about Arian, although they were sure that he would not risk fighting the Demon King. They had no idea what was really happening on the other side of the gate, in the heart of another world. At that moment, Balzac completed his descent, and the hero decided to make contact with him and get to know him. But it turned out that Echidna already knew this demon because he is the lord of the lands of death in her native dimension. The locals called him the King because he ruled over immortal creatures from the dark depths. However, the new familiar did not feel affection, but hostility, which only grew with every passing moment. Arian tried to explain the situation, but Balzac only laughed mockingly, not taking his words seriously. Despite this, the hero remained confident and assured that he would always remember the loyalty of his allies. He remembered how he had once thanked Paloka and Lilith by fulfilling the promises they had made to them in hell. But the Demon King did not change his mood, instead activating his own power, raising the dead. Skeletons began to emerge from the ground one by one, announcing the beginning of his dark ritual. The system warned that due to the high level of hostility, Arian could not give orders to Balzac. Not wanting to drag out the battle, the hero snapped his fingers and instantly destroyed all the skeletons that were in his way. In response, Balzac created a squad of Death Knights and tasked Echidna with destroying each one of them. When she moved to carry out the order, the hero suddenly attacked the demon, breaking through its magical defenses. The attack was so powerful that Balzac was thrown dozens of meters forward, exposing his weakness. Not wanting to lose his advantage, he used his last resort. He broke the bottle he was carrying on his chest. As a result, a new rift opened, from which a demon from the 9,000th circle of hell, the guardian of terror, emerged. He immediately saw the battlefield and decided that the opponent was a dragon, judging by its strength and energy. But Balzac called on him to help in the battle against man, pointing to a figure in the center of the field. However, upon looking at the hero's face, the demon immediately recognized Arion, the Lord of Demons. His reaction was unexpected. He was sincerely delighted to meet him, which completely puzzled Balzac. During the conversation, it became clear that the ancient creatures in hell had begun to more actively seize new lands. The hero guessed that this might be related to his disappearance for a certain period of time. Palak was doing just that, trying to gather evidence and clarify the nature of these changes. Balzac's intervention was unexpected. He did not understand the meaning of the calm conversation and was furiously indignant. He began to threaten, demanding to kill the hero immediately, shouting insulting words. Then the sentry of terror intervened, disregarding Balzac's order, and explained who stood before them. According to him, it was a demon lord, so any aggression was simply pointless. The challenge reached its conclusion, and the monster began to gradually dissolve, disappearing into thin air. As he said goodbye, he promised to convey warm words to Palak, but Arion had another request. Instead of greeting him, the hero asked to be warned not to try to return there again. After that, he noticed how Balzac bowed, pretending to immediately recognize the ruler. The hero doubted his sincerity and asked how he managed to summon the monster in the first place. The king said that all this was possible thanks to the blood of a demonic god named Lucifer. This progenitor of demons was a source of powerful power, enough to create a rift. The hero remembered the infernal weapon that was used upon his return to this earth. He realized that parts of the souls of the 7 supreme demons still remained within her. These particles could theoretically be used to revive the most terrifying of the dark pantheon. There was also the possibility that one of these souls had ended up in Erno, just like the hero himself once had. Arion understood that if Lucifer regained his strength, it would be impossible to defeat him. However, if you use the Soul Reaper, you can gain the power of all 7 demons at once. The problem is that even now it is not known for sure where Lucifer himself is. At this moment, Echidna approached, at first offended that they had forgotten to warn her about the end of the battle. She recalled that in ancient times, archangels descended to earth to stop demons. This happened long before the hero found himself in the human world, so it was difficult to compare. The hero asked Balzac a new question about the magic of disguise because he was hungry and wanted a snack. 3 months passed, during which the hero searched for traces of cultists and relics, but all was in vain. Esme managed to reach rank 10 and became one of the world-class players. Clark and Ronnie also grew in strength, rising to 9th rank during their time training together. Other team members, including Hannah, Eva, and Jim, have significantly improved their skills. However, no one had any news about Eric, neither good nor bad. Arion was sitting, lost in thought, when Hannah suddenly entered the room. She closed the door behind her and without saying anything walked over to the bed, sitting down with her back to it. The hero was confused when he saw her slowly begin to take off her outerwear. He felt embarrassed, but the next moment his gaze was drawn to the symbols on her back. These were clear outlines of wings, similar to engravings, that appeared after reaching the 8th rank. This moment opened up new questions that will have to be answered in the near future. Arion was embarrassed by the situation, but forced himself to act calmly. He was curious about what new ability she had gained after reaching the 8th level of power. Hannah calmly replied that the name of the skill spoke for itself. It was Wings of Light. The name sounded majestic, but outwardly the girl looked almost the same as before. Not noticing any significant changes, the hero decided to check if it was just a passive skill. He carefully reached out, touching the place where the engraving was. Her fingers felt the warmth and soft light that pulsed faintly beneath her skin, like breath. This touch reminded him of an old story Echidna had told him during their journey. That story was about archangels who descended from heaven to stop the curse of demons. He wondered if this had anything to do with what was happening to Hannah right now. There is probably more to her powers than she seems, although she herself does not yet understand it. Arion felt something new being born between them, not just trust, but something deeper. There was no information about the new skill at all, so the hero decided to act proactively, protecting Hannah. He imposed a special magical field that was supposed to activate in case of any changes in her energy. Arian asked the girl to immediately report any unusual sensations in her body or mind. Hannah was touched by his concern, overwhelmed with emotions she could no longer contain. But suddenly Echidna burst into the room, who was looking for Hannah and didn't know what the hero was up to. What she saw surprised her, because the girl was sitting wrapped in a blanket next to Arian, clearly embarrassed. There was an awkward silence in the room, but later all three of them went down to the kitchen to have breakfast together. The table was already ready, because Balzac had been busy in the kitchen since morning, wearing a bright pink apron. The once formidable demon now fussed with the laundry, examining the stains, behaving almost like a domestic servant. 3 months ago, upon returning home, Balzac tried the dish for the first time and asked to be taught home cooking. From that time on, he began to help with household chores, reluctantly but diligently, and over time he even found joy in it. But their peace was interrupted by an unexpected event. Someone knocked loudly on the door, as if warning of something important. Arian approached the entrance and carefully opened it, after which someone who had not been seen for a long time appeared on the threshold. After long training sessions, Eric's aura changed. It became dense and noticeably saturated with power. His gaze was serious, but when he saw Arian, his face lit up with joy. Without hesitation, he rushed towards the hero, hugging him with such force that it was as if he hadn't seen him in an eternity. Hannah stood nearby, her face tense. She also wanted a hug, but was too shy to show it. Her hands were clenched into fists, her gaze sharp, although in her heart she was glad to have her friend back. But suddenly everything changed. Eric froze, and then screamed so loudly that the walls shook. His eyes became filled with anger. He saw Balzac and rushed at him with a bestial roar. Balzac stood by the laundry basket, neatly folding things, completely unafraid of being attacked. Arian could already see in his mind how this fight would turn the apartment into a pile of rubble and ash. He imagined his beloved kitchen burning down and the dish disappearing forever. This forced him to act decisively. Without holding back his emotions, the hero shouted in a tone he had never heard from himself before. Eric looked around in confusion, as if he had only just realized what was really happening. He immediately apologized, pressing his hand to his heart in a show of respect. Once on the roof, they continued their conversation, with Eric's training still unfinished. Earlier, he was approached by a female guard, Grace, the first American player with great strength. No one knew she was part of the Guardians, but her influence made the U.S. a superpower. She invited Eric to join them, but he said he would consult with Arian first. While they were standing on the roof, Eric took out a strange object that resembled an egg and opened it. A moment later, a bright portal appeared in the air, leading to the world of the Guardians, to which they were to pass. Upon entering the portal, they were met by Raya, the head of the guards who led this mysterious alliance of defenders. She welcomed the guests, expressing her willingness to help in the joint fight against the dark forces. At that moment, Eric felt a sense of responsibility, realizing that their mission was just beginning. Her name was identical to the code of the system that limited Arian's powers upon his return to Earth. When they met, they exchanged greetings, and Gaia felt Eric's soul, having gone through his pain and suffering. Grace gently took her hand, carefully guiding it in the right direction, as she is blind and in a wheelchair. Arian held his gaze at this moment, thinking that the system had a direct connection to its limitations. He decided not to delve any further, and moved on to discussing the Guardians' main objective once the team was comfortably settled. Gaia spoke about the existence of other worlds and about demons that the cult summons from one of the parallel dimensions. She admitted that the hunting gate itself is also an interdimensional passage for such creatures from other worlds. Her role was to act as a shield against invading beings from other dimensions, and to be the personification of the system itself. Thinking about the limits of her influence, Gaia gave an example of when the system notified Eric about the activation of a cult in Korea. The Guardian's mission is precisely to bear the burden of the system and destroy beings that infiltrate from other realities. However, this is only the beginning. Gaia recalled a vision that appeared 5 years ago on the day of the disaster. That vision said that in the future a demon of procreation would descend to Earth, the ruler of Hell, capable of destroying everything. This made Arian pale, for he instantly realized that it was he who was being referred to, and the meaning of this vision became horrifying. After that, Grace showed the current state of the system that protects the Earth, and it was truly critical, far from ideal. She explained that the system has a regeneration function, but it is currently unavailable and is activated after the demon is destroyed. The connection between the state of the system and Gaia's weakness was obvious, although she did not wish to make it too obvious. The only way to help Earth and herself is to destroy that demon, and as it turns out, the Guardians already know that he is here on the planet. They even had the exact date of the demon's appearance, which coincided with Arian and Hannah's first meeting. Arian was distraught, realizing that any investigation could expose his true nature, and the consequences would be fatal. Meanwhile, Eric slammed the table down sharply and began to talk about Satan killing Alex right in front of him. It caused a shock. Arian could no longer sit idly by. He stood up abruptly and turned to his brother, asking if this had really happened. He added that he would like to join them if possible, and is ready to help protect the system from demons. Gaia began to ask in more detail about Satan's appearance and the power he possessed. Her voice was calm, but it was the mention of a woman's scream that caught the particular attention of the leader of the Guardians. This scream touched deep memories, as it was connected to Alex's long-standing psychological trauma. A year ago, during one of the missions, Alex faced the danger associated with the cult and its terrible actions. At first glance, everything seemed like an ordinary battle, which he managed to win by destroying his opponent. But it later became known that the girl he killed was his lover, who was used by the cultists for the plan. They completely broke her will, brainwashed her, and forced her to oppose Alex in that fatal fight. After this incident, he blamed himself for not recognizing her in time and failing to save her from death. It was from that moment that he began to live with a new credo: to conquer the enemy, but not to kill him unnecessarily. No one could have imagined that even cultists could use emotions so vilely for their own purposes. Later, Grace brought a secret case in which 2 masks were hidden, specifically for concealing her identity. Such masks were used during combat missions to ensure the anonymity and protection of the Guardians. Eric was the first to try on the mask, and it immediately became noticeable how his combat parameters began to increase. Next was Arian, who was allowed to join the team, despite it being against the rules. His informal inclusion was an exception, as the Guardians needed the help of a strong and loyal ally. Grace saw in Arian a true desire for justice, which is why she allowed him to join the team. As soon as he put on the mask, everyone present felt a surge of energy. His power began to permeate the space. The characteristics jumped sharply, but Arian managed to master the flow of energy and contain it on the verge of detection. This allowed him to hide his true identity and avoid unnecessary suspicions that could ruin the plan. Upon his return, Eric shared with Arian the new emotions that were overwhelming him. He told how he saw Raya, a fragile and weakened girl who touched his heart deeply and unexpectedly. The feeling for her grew into an inner vow. If necessary, he was ready to sacrifice his life. Arian's words were alarming, as the situation became increasingly unpredictable and emotionally complex. He didn't argue, he just nodded in response, agreeing to help Eric continue to go with the flow. Some time passed, and Eric returned to his usual training with Fabian to keep fit in his skills. At the same time, Esme did not stop her work. She continued to investigate the traces of the cult and monitor their activities. Meanwhile, the hero received a call to meet with Raya, who was already waiting for him at the Temple of the Feeders with important news. This temple was her permanent residence, and it was there that she handed over a new task to Arian. The system protecting the Earth began to weaken, and it was happening noticeably faster than ever before. All this indicated that the demon of prophecy was gradually breaking the seals and restoring its own power. There was no doubt that a cult was behind this process, and it was becoming increasingly active in its actions. Upon receiving the alarming information, Raya immediately summoned the hero so as not to lose precious time. After that, Arian paused for a moment on the roof of his own house, waiting for Echidna, as always, with sweets. He wiped the crumbs from her face when Balzac suddenly appeared, unexpectedly breaking their silent scene. Arian joked that he was probably rotting at home, sitting motionless and avoiding direct sunlight. Soon the three heroes set off on another mission together without delaying a single moment, because there was almost no time left. Their destination was the destroyed city of Daegu, which suffered on the day of the disaster, retaining a dark aura. It is in the center of this abandoned city that three gates once appeared, and now they have become a new source of threat. Arian chose some of them, those that emitted the most powerful wave of dark magic among all the other portals. Inside, they noticed a mysterious object that was radiating enormous and uncontrolled energy force. The space around began to be covered with cracks, from which streams of demonic essence and sound erupted. Then a crowd of demons appeared, summoned by the power of the cultists who had remained in the shadows for the time being. Behind all this stood a man in dark clothing. He directed the actions of the demons and gave them orders. Echidna was the first to attack, without hesitation entering into battle with the enemies, who were becoming more and more numerous. Balzac immediately joined her, summoning a living dead man from the body of the slain demon to fight. Now this creature has turned against its former allies, knowing neither regret nor doubt. Suddenly the cultist summoned a new demon. It was Chrysalis, covered in scales like battle armor. His body was soaked with acid, every movement leaving traces of destructive energy on the ground and in the air. Before them stood the real Chrysalis, a demon from the 8,000th circle of hell, a creature of true horror. His gaze fell on Arian, and he immediately rushed to attack, intending to destroy the hero with a single blow. But Arian didn't give him a chance. One precise blow destroyed the demon before he could even get up. The force with which this was done caused the surrounding space to shudder and freeze in silence for a moment. But it turned out that the monster managed to avoid the first blow and did not stop resisting, trying to escape from the fight. He still had the strength to move, and although his body was mutilated, the attacks did not cease, and his mad rage only grew. But the hero remained calm. He took a deep breath, concentrated, and finally managed to calm the angry creature. The cultist from the rear shouted, forcing the demon to rise, forcing it to obey again and again. Arian noticed this and immediately activated the Overseer's ability to read data about this mysterious creature. The inspection revealed an unusual detail. Control was carried out through a magic circle tattooed on the arm. However, something changed. The demon stopped, his gaze became blank, and he no longer obeyed orders. Then the hero cold-bloodedly cut off the cultist's hand, emphasizing that the magic circle had already ceased to operate. The power of that artifact depended on time, and the countdown had long since ended, leaving the cultist without control. Arian also mentioned an interesting detail about this demon. Chrysalis always aimed for extremely delicate places first. That's exactly what happened now. His first move was to attack a vulnerable point, which caused a brief confusion. The hero did not hesitate. Seizing the moment, he destroyed the monster before it could do anything. But that wasn't the end, because Arian wanted to question the cultist, but he was moaning and didn't understand what was happening. Pain filled his mind, so the hero activated his concentration ability to reduce the enemy's sensitivity. This method had an immediate effect. It reduced pain, focused consciousness, and stimulated rapid recovery. When the enemy came to his senses, Arian didn't waste time talking. He immediately activated the subjugation of consciousness. Under his influence, the cultist began to speak as if under hypnosis, unable to resist or lie. He spoke about the situation in Korea after Elliot's death. A vacuum arose in the cult structure there. Why this particular country was so important, the cultist did not know, although the fact itself surprised him too. The hero suggested that the reason might be related to the Black Wedge, which he had heard about before. The cultist mentioned that this was a seed of discord, but the hero did not understand the specific meaning of these words. There was a feeling that even the performer himself did not realize what exactly he was involved in this regard. In effect, he was used as a puppet and then thrown out without being given a chance or an explanation. Arian approached the keel. The scan gave a clear result. This object was having an effect on the system, gradually weakening it. To test the consequences, the hero made a risky decision: to swallow it completely. As soon as he did this, the feeling changed instantly, and shock gripped his entire being without exception. The impact was profound, far from ordinary. It touched not only the power, but the very essence of the hero. Delving into his own subconscious, Arian felt a strange warmth. Mam's seal had noticeably weakened. It was a long-awaited sign of change, and an inexplicable feeling of relief awoke within him. Then the cultist asked him if he would give him a chance for forgiveness and life. The hero agreed, removing all the overlays, but only in order to complete the task himself. A few seconds later, he killed him without pain, and then absorbed the demons with almost no change in his power level. His energy increased subtly, but his control over it remained stable and reliable. Arian contacted Gaia to report the completion of the mission and share the news. In particular, he recalled the phrase about the seeds of discord and asked to keep all the finds in one place. Officially, for further research, but in reality, he intended to absorb them at the appropriate time. After finishing the conversation, he dialed Esme's number, who was about to give new information about the cult. But the hero calmly reported that the threat had been eliminated, so there was no need to worry about it anymore. He also instructed her to collect the seeds of discord and pass this instruction on to the other guilds. After that, he said goodbye and for a few seconds did not dare to make another call. It was Yuna, and although fear held his hand back, Arian still forced himself to press the challenge. She answered, and he briefly told her the same thing he had told the previous interlocutors. He sincerely thanked her for the tentacles and the funds, already about to end this conversation. But Yuna suddenly asked who the cultists worshipped, with curiosity in her voice. Hearing the answer, she almost laughed. It felt like something was wrong with her. Lilith was in her body, and she knew more, so she asked questions about the Cthulhu mythos. She was interested in the ancient tentacled creatures she had been researching recently. Although it seemed strange, something about it really interested the hero on a subconscious level. They decided that they would discuss this in more detail next time when the time came. 10 days passed, and it was time for another meeting, in which Gaia participated. She briefly reported that the state of the system had improved, although it was not yet fully stable. This gave Arian a reason to immediately go to the main one and inquire about the seed storage. Grace lifted Gaia into her arms, carried her, and they set off together with the hero. On the way, Gaia began to talk about the Guardian's Temple, which opens access to portals. Each member of the organization could now visit this place whenever they felt the need. Through these gates, you can return to familiar locations or head to new points. Among them were the headquarters, the training room, and other places belonging to the structure. They were approaching a new space, and Gaia warned them to close their eyes from the blinding sun. The light was bright, as the morning had just begun, and the rays hit me right in the face. After crossing the gate, they found themselves in a secret vault located in the Grand Canyon.